Help me, she whispered, her voice cracking over the phone in raw desperation. I'm in the ICU. Mom's lover. He attacked me. That was all Staff Sergeant Gabriel Gabe Pierce needed to hear to drop everything. He ended the call without another word, thrust the battered satellite phone into his cargo pocket, and threw his gear into the nearest black duffel bag. Up until that moment, he had been half a world away in one of the most dangerous conflict zones imaginable, covertly coordinating a mission to extract a high-value asset for U.S. intelligence. For years, decades really, Gabe's life had revolved around black ops. He was the ghost in the night, the relentless hound sniffing out threats, the silent soldier who kept atrocities from ever spilling into the public eye. He had no fear. The only thing that mattered was success. But now, hearing his daughter's plea, fear struck him more fiercely than any firefight ever could. Fear that he had failed his family, that the secrets in the distance had allowed something unthinkable to happen back home. Fear that his sweet daughter Emily lay in a hospital bed fighting for her life, while he had been stationed thousands of miles away. He forced himself to remain calm as he secured his weapons in the hidden compartment of the duffel. Normally, he'd follow strict protocols. Turn in his sidearm, debrief. This time, no. He was done with red tape and official channels. Family came first, always. 3 days later, Gabe was on a commercial flight into Raleigh-Durham International Airport, the fastest route he could manage under the circumstances. He used a fake name on his ticket, Jonathan Crane, a habit from years of clandestine travel. His mind churned with unanswered questions. Why was Emily in the ICU? What exactly had her mother's lover done? Where was Rachel, Gabe's wife, in all of this? He had arrived in the States with no time to lose. The moment he crossed through immigration, he vanished into a side hallway. He wore a navy hoodie over black jeans, blending in with the crowd. Not a single person would guess that under the nonchalant veneer hid a man who had neutralized warlords, dismantled drug cartels, and made a career of slipping in and out of lethal conflict zones. His phone buzzed. A text from the only stateside contact he trusted to gather intel. She's stable. Room 416. I'm outside. Outside meant the hospital. The friend, an ex-Marine named Harris, had done Gabe a favor by checking on Emily in person because Gabe didn't trust his wife's word. He didn't want to talk to Rachel yet. Something in Emily's tone, in the confession about Mom's lover, told him Rachel herself might be complicit. Grim-faced, Gabe hailed a cab and told the driver, Rexford Medical Center. Faster you get me there, the bigger your tip. The driver glanced at Gabe's stern expression and nodded. You got it, boss. The hospital corridor smelled sharply of antiseptic and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing everything in a clinical pallor. Gabe turned into the ICU wing, heart hammering. Harris, a barrel-chested man with salt and pepper hair, waved him over. How is she? Gabe demanded, skipping small talk. He dropped his duffel by a row of plastic chairs. Harris frowned. Doctors say she's stable but in pain. Broken arm, bruised ribs, a concussion. They're keeping her to ensure there's no internal bleeding. She's shaken up, man. Says some scumbag attacked her in your house. Harris's gaze flicked around and he lowered his voice. Emily's been real quiet about the details. She mentioned something about Rachel's boyfriend or lover. I don't know. I didn't press her. That's your family business. Gabe took a slow breath, rage simmering beneath the surface. I'll see her myself. He found Emily's room, 416. The blinds were drawn, the lights dim. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm. Emily lay propped up by pillows, an IV in her arm, face pale, eyes fluttering as if she battled tears. Seeing her like that wrecked Gabe more thoroughly than any bullet he'd ever taken in combat. Dad, she croaked, eyes lighting up at the sight of him. Gabe knelt beside her bed, gently taking her uninjured hand in both of his. I'm here, he said, his voice trembling. I came as soon as I could. I promise, Em, I won't let anything else happen to you. Her eyes welled with tears. You can't imagine how awful it was. Then she broke down, stifling sobs in the crook of her arm. It took a couple of minutes for her to gather herself. Gabe just held her hand, letting her tears flow. At last, she whispered, Dad, Mom, He touched his fingertip to her lips, shaking his head gently. Take your time. I need the truth, but don't push yourself. She nodded, swallowing. It's complicated. I came home from my campus library shift early. The house was dark, so I thought no one was home. I heard voices downstairs, men's voices. Her face twisted at the memory. I assumed we were being robbed or something. Mom didn't text me that she was having visitors. She paused, chest heaving with a shaky breath. Gabe's expression grew darker, but he let her continue. So I snuck upstairs quietly. I wanted to find Mom, warn her, or call the police. I thought, maybe I'll just check if she's in her room, locked away safely. But when I got there, Emily winced, tears reappearing in the corners of her eyes. Dad, I saw Mom. In bed with her boss, Mr. Westcroft. The name alone made Gabe's teeth clench. Westcroft, an obscenely wealthy real estate magnate who employed Rachel as an executive assistant. Gabe had never liked the man. He was flashy, arrogant, always pressing too close to Rachel at those corporate parties. Emily continued, I must have let out a gasp or something, because he called for his security guards, two big men who'd been sitting downstairs waiting. Mom, oh God, Dad, Mom started screaming at me, telling me to leave, calling me a little witch who was interfering in her life. And the security guys cornered me at the top of the stairs. They told me to go quietly, but I kept trying to reason with Mom. I was shouting, what are you doing? You're still married. This is insane. Emily broke off, shaking her head in disbelief. She just kept yelling back, get out, you little witch. Mind your own business. Gabe's entire body tensed, every muscle rigid with an anger he had to keep in check. The idea that Rachel, his wife, had turned on their daughter so viciously set his blood on fire. Emily swallowed, voice raw. And then one guard shoved me. I lost my balance. I fell backward down the stairs. I remember the hit at the bottom. The pain. Then everything went dark. Next thing I know, I woke up here in the ICU. Gabe's nostrils flared. He pressed a tender kiss to Emily's forehead. I'm so sorry, baby girl, he murmured, quietly seething. I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. This will never happen again. She sniffled, blinking back more tears. It's not your fault, Mom. She's changed. I don't understand her anymore. Then Mr. Westcroft came by the hospital once, right after the ambulance brought me in. He tried to bribe me not to tell you. He offered me a brand new BMW M3 if I kept my mouth shut. Emily choked out a bitter laugh that morphed into a sob. Like I'd sell my silence about being attacked for a fancy car. When I refused, he threatened me. Said if I tried to involve you, Dad, if I told you everything, he'd make sure both you and I regretted it. She clenched her hand into a fist around the bedsheet. I was scared, but I called you anyway. Good, Gabe said, fury glittering in his dark eyes. You did the right thing. I don't give a damn who this man thinks he is. You don't threaten my daughter. Emily managed a trembling smile. I knew you'd come. Even if Mom didn't want you around anymore, I knew you wouldn't leave me in danger. Gabe swallowed, forcing down the wave of hurt and betrayal. I'll handle it, Em. Rest now. I'm here. She squeezed his hand. Be careful, Dad. You know how powerful Westcroft is. And Mom's not the same. She's so arrogant these days. I don't want you to get caught up in something you can't fix. He shook his head gently. I've seen worse in my life. Trust me, I'll fix this. Gabe stayed with her until she drifted off under the gentle hum of medication. Then he stepped out into the hallway, found Harris waiting with arms folded over his broad chest. You get the whole story? Harris asked, lowering his voice. Enough, Gabe said grimly. I'm going to see Rachel. Harris hesitated. Gabe, Westcroft's got a small army on payroll. Corporate security guys, ex-military types. You might be outnumbered. A flicker of a cold grin passed over Gabe's face, the grin that used to send criminals scurrying for cover. They'll need a lot more than muscle to stop me. Rachel Pierce was waiting in the hospital's main lobby. Gabe spotted her before she saw him. She looked frantic, pacing near a coffee kiosk, still wearing business heels and a stiff pencil skirt, hair pinned in a perfect updo. A face that used to show warmth toward him now displayed only tension and resentment. He approached, footsteps echoing sharply on the polished floor. Rachel's eyes fell on him, and for a moment she looked legitimately alarmed, like she had seen a ghost. Gabe? She said, her voice jarring with confusion. You're home? Why didn't you tell me you were flying in? He gave a humorless snort. Didn't think you'd care, seeing as you've decided to get a boyfriend while I'm away risking my life. Good to know you're moving on so quickly. Her face colored. It's not like that. I didn't know how to reach you. You vanish on these secret missions for weeks, months. I didn't have a phone number or— Stop, Gabe snapped, voice low but intense. Don't lie to me. Emily told me everything. She nearly died in our house because your lover's goons attacked her. She's lying in ICU with a broken arm and a concussion. Don't you dare pretend ignorance. Rachel bristled defensively. She's exaggerating. No one tried to kill her, Gabe. She tripped or fell or— The point is, she startled us and it was an accident. God, do you think I'd let anyone deliberately harm her? She's my daughter, too. She paused, voice growing quieter with a hint of desperation. I never wanted it to get this far. I didn't plan on your daughter walking in at such a private moment. If she'd minded her own business, she wouldn't have gotten hurt. That single statement made Gabe's blood boil. He advanced a half step. Minded her own business? Rachel, that's her house too. You're the one carrying on with your boss while you're still married to me. Her chin lifted in defiance. You abandoned me, Gabe. How long was I supposed to wait around while you took every Black Ops assignment thrown your way, missing birthdays, anniversaries? I have needs. William, Mr. Westcroft, he understands me. He's helped me in ways you never did. Gabe's voice dropped to a dangerous rasp. So you repay his help by letting him set up camp in my house? Letting him assault our daughter? Threaten her with hush money? You think I'm just going to brush that off? Rachel's lips trembled with anger. William never threatened her. He only tried to smooth things over with a gift. I was there. I heard him. Emily's turning everything into some big drama. Look, she's fine, isn't she? Fine? Gabe's eyes flared. She's traumatized. She had to call me, terrified, after you sided with your boss. What the hell, Rachel? His fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to remain calm, but her dismissiveness was pushing him to the edge. Rachel's voice shook. You don't understand the position I'm in. William is a powerful man. He can change my life for the better if I stay with him, and he can destroy me if I leave. Do you think you can just waltz back in from your secret war zones and fix everything with a wave of your hand? Gabe exhaled, stepping back to keep from shouting. Listen carefully. I don't care about your new fling or his power. I care about my daughter's safety. And if you had any sense left in you, you would too. She scoffed. Don't you dare question my love for Emily. I was the one who raised her day in and day out while you were halfway around the world. You can't just appear now, a hero in shining armor, and condemn me. You've been absent for years, Gabe. That accusation struck a nerve. Gabe clenched his jaw, forcibly recalling the nights he had missed birthdays and recitals. He had chosen a path that kept him away, but it was never to abandon his family. It was to serve, to protect, and to provide a secure future. He shook his head. I'm done arguing. From this point on, keep Westcroft away from Emily. If I see him near her again, I'll put him down myself. Rachel's mouth opened and closed, struggling for words. Finally, she forced a bitter laugh. You can try. He's got bodyguards, lawyers. He's unstoppable. And you? She smirked, eyes cold. You're just a soldier, on borrowed time. You can kill from the shadows in some godforsaken desert, sure, but not here in civilized society. A flash of raw anger crossed Gabe's face. Then chillingly, it vanished into a calm mask. Watch me, he said quietly. He turned on his heel and strode away, leaving Rachel standing there with parted lips, arrogance faltering. She could sense the shift in his demeanor, from outraged husband to something far more dangerous. Gabe left the hospital and drove to his old safe house on the outskirts of town, a modest property he had purchased under a friend's name years ago. It was nothing fancy, just a single-story building with a reinforced basement. The perfect hideout. He needed space to think, to plan, to reacquaint himself with the life he had left behind for too long. He spent the night pacing, replaying Emily's words. When he stepped into the room, I saw Mom in bed with her boss. He called his security. They pushed me. Mom yelled I was a little witch. Then I fell, ended up in ICU. He offered me a BMW to keep silent. Every detail churned up more anger. This was a betrayal on too many levels. Rachel's betrayal of their vows, betrayal of maternal instincts by letting her only daughter be threatened, betrayal of basic decency. Gabe's mind pulsed with the training hammered into him during Black Ops missions, how to identify a target's vulnerabilities, how to methodically dismantle them. How far do I go with this? He muttered in the dimly lit living room. A single lamp cast his silhouette on the wall. He clenched and unclenched his fists, thinking of Emily's sweet face. I can't let them get away with this. He pictured Westcroft. Wealthy, powerful, used to having everything his way, accustomed to corrupting the system with money. But Gabe wasn't just any Black Ops soldier. He specialized in infiltration, sabotage, intelligence gathering. If Westcroft believed his resources would keep him safe, he hadn't yet met the man behind the fatherly facade. Gabe had done unspeakable things in the name of national security. Now he'd do them for Emily. Morning light found Gabe already busy. He had made a list of everything he knew about William Westcroft: addresses, phone numbers, security details, hangouts, known associates. He typed furiously on an encrypted laptop, siphoning intelligence from a few unofficial government databases he still had backdoor access to. Background: William Frederick Westcroft, age 50, net worth approaching $1 billion. Real estate mogul, owns multiple high-profile properties downtown, invests in hotels, condos, commercial buildings. Known for philanthropic gestures in public. Rumored ties to shady deals, offshore accounts, hush money payoffs. Security: ex-special forces as personal guards, traveling in pairs or trios, heavily armed. Primary vulnerabilities: hypothesized. Hidden gambling habit or some scandal that can be leveraged. Potential money laundering. His relationship with Rachel might not be the only affair. Gabe can use jealousy or scandal as a wedge. If he physically harmed Emily or left her in harm's way, that's potential criminal liability. In missions overseas, Gabe's tasks often involve toppling warlords by turning their allies against them or funneling evidence to the right channels to create a chain reaction. He now considered a similar approach. A direct confrontation with Westcroft's guards might be suicidal. Instead, he could choke off the man's empire from the inside, let the law descend upon him, while also extracting a more personal retribution. A ring from his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Emily, calling from the hospital. "Emily, hey, you all right?" Gabe answered immediately, tension in his voice. She sniffed. I'm okay. They might release me tomorrow, but Dad, Mom was here. She was crying, begging me to say that everything was an accident. She even got on her knees, Dad. She said, "Emily, don't ruin my life. If you tell your father about how I was with William, I'll lose everything." She was practically sobbing, saying, "You know how your dad gets. He's dangerous. It was just a mistake." Emily paused, breath unsteady. She apologized over and over, but then she also made excuses. It was so confusing. Gabe inhaled slowly, anger spiking. She's only begging now because she's afraid. She's not sorry about what happened. She's sorry she got caught. Yeah, that's how it felt. Then William himself showed up again, right after Mom left. That arrogant jerk walked in. Didn't even knock. He told me I was serious about my offer. A brand new BMW M3. You can pick the color. Just don't speak a word of this to your father or the police. He smirked at me, Dad. He actually smirked. Emily's voice quivered with disgust. I told him I'd see him in hell first. He just stared me down, said I was making a big mistake, then walked out. Gabe's jaw clenched. Next time he shows up, you call me immediately. I'll handle it. Dad, what are you going to do? For a moment, Gabe didn't speak. What could he tell her? That he was assembling a plan more akin to a takedown operation than a family squabble? That he had the skill set to do far worse than just scare Westcroft? Finally, he said softly, I'm going to protect you, Em. No matter what it takes, I promise. Okay, but be careful, she repeated, voice trembling. Please, Dad. I will, he lied. In truth, caution wasn't at the top of his priority list. Late that evening, Gabe parked his black SUV a few blocks away from Westcroft's lavish mansion. Through binoculars, he surveyed the sprawling estate. Tall fences, manicured lawns, security cameras on every corner. He counted 4 roaming guards, each armed. 2 guard dogs patrolling near the gates. Sensors, most likely, near the windows and doors. This guy thinks he's a fortress, Gabe muttered. He has no idea what a real fortress is. In the distance, city lights shimmered. Gabe ran a hand over the stubble on his chin. He remembered times in foreign cities, scoping out compounds for infiltration, identifying guard shifts, alarm systems, routines. Yet this time, it was personal. He couldn't just blow a hole in the side of the property and storm in with a team. He needed precision. And a part of him wanted to watch Westcroft lose everything, suffer humiliation, then maybe a final confrontation. He recorded the guards' patterns with a camera phone, methodically noting each pass. The next step would be hacking into Westcroft's office or personal accounts, or tailing him to one of his private clubs. Eventually, he'd pick a weakness. Then, he'd break it open. He stayed there for hours, unblinking, letting the wrath simmer just beneath the surface. The following morning, Gabe received a frantic text from Emily. Dad, I'm being discharged today. I'm scared to go home. Gabe fired back. You won't go back. I'll pick you up. He arrived at the hospital by mid-afternoon. Emily stood outside the entrance, wearing casual sweatpants and a hoodie, her broken arm in a cast. The bruises along her jawline made Gabe's chest tighten with fatherly protectiveness. She attempted a shaky smile as he approached. Without warning, Rachel stepped out from behind a pillar. "Emily, wait!" she called. She looked disheveled, makeup smeared from tears. She must have noticed Gabe's tall, broad figure in the corner of her eye, because she stiffened and tried to compose herself. Emily turned away from her mother. "I already said, I'm leaving with Dad. I'm not going back to that house." Rachel's eyes flicked to Gabe, then back to Emily. "You can't just run away from me. I'm your mother. That's your home. We can talk things through." William promised he'll stay away for a while. "Until what?" Emily retorted bitterly. "Until you can meet him at some hotel? No, I'm done. You didn't believe me. You sided with him. You called me a little witch." Her voice wavered. "How could you do that to your own daughter?" Rachel's lips trembled. I was upset. It all happened so quickly. I love you, sweetie. Please believe that. I would never intentionally hurt you. I was just confused." Gabe stepped between them, addressing Rachel with quiet fury. "Go. Now." She stared at him with a mixture of fear and anger. "Don't turn her against me." "You already did that yourself," he growled. He placed a protective arm around Emily's shoulders and guided her toward his SUV. Rachel fell to her knees on the concrete sidewalk, tears streaming down her face, making a spectacle in front of passing nurses and visitors. "Emily, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. We can fix this. The three of us." Emily paused, biting her lip, tears brimming. But the memory of that push, her mother's cruel words, and Westcroft's threats kept her resolute. She shook her head and got into the car. Gabe gave Rachel one last look, an expression of utter contempt, overshadowing the heartbreak. Then he slid into the driver's seat and roared away. In the SUV, silence reigned for several minutes. Emily wiped at her tears, trying to steady her breathing. Gabe kept his gaze locked on the road, tension radiating off him. At last, Emily broke the silence. "Dad, I don't want to see her again. Is that wrong of me?" Gabe sighed. "No, it's not wrong to protect yourself from someone who hurt you, physically or emotionally." He paused. "Your mom, she chose her path. She aligned with that bastard. I won't force you to be around her." Emily nodded, relief mixing with sorrow on her face. Then softly, she asked, "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," Gabe replied. "I have a place. I'll explain everything once we're there." He took her to the safe house. Emily's eyes widened at the Spartan interior, the reinforced door, the computer station, the locked cabinets. "Dad, are you sure this is okay for me to stay in? It looks like—" "I don't know. A bunker?" Gabe shrugged. "It's safe. No one knows about it, not even your mother. And if Westcroft tries anything, I'll be ready." He gently helped her settle in, propping her injured arm on a cushion. "Rest. I'll get us dinner. Then, we plan." "Plan what?" Emily asked, voice quiet. He met her gaze, his own expression darkening. "Our next moves. I promised you I'd handle this. I will." That evening, the father and daughter sat around a small wooden table. A single overhead light illuminated them and the takeout containers from a nearby Chinese restaurant. Emily ate slowly, clearly not having much of an appetite. Gabe poured her some water. "Tell me more about Westcroft. Has he threatened you before?" Gabe asked, picking at his own food, though he felt no real hunger. "No," Emily said. "I mean, I'd see him around if I visited Mom's work or at those big office parties. He'd smile, ask how school was. Nothing weird, but recently, like a few months ago, he started showing up more. Mom said it was professional. Then she started driving a new Mercedes, claiming it was a company perk. When I questioned it, she got defensive. I guess that's around the time they started, well, hooking up." Emily's voice trembled with disgust. Gabe's eyes narrowed. "He's been grooming her, in a sense, showering her with gifts, money. She's dazzled." Emily nodded glumly. "I think so. Mom's changed so much. She used to be, I don't know, kinder. But now she's arrogant, snapping at me when I ask about her personal life. And Westcroft's always swirling around with these giant bodyguards. He thinks he's untouchable." "Everyone has weaknesses," Gabe said quietly, his black ops instincts surfacing. "He's used to power, intimidation, money. I can fight him in ways he won't see coming." She looked up, eyes wet. "Just promise me you won't go to jail, Dad. I can't lose both parents. I mean, I still love Mom no matter what she did, but I need you. Gabe reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I promise I'll be careful, but I can't let him keep strutting around like this. He exhaled. You're still recovering, so try to get some sleep tonight. Tomorrow I'll show you how to navigate the safe house. There's a bedroom down the hall. She managed a grateful nod. Thanks, Dad. Gabe stayed up late, mapping out infiltration points, checking local data about Westcroft's business dealings, looking for angles. He had compiled a mental list of resources. Ex-military buddies, private investigators, hackers he'd done favors for in the past. So many ways to break a man. Now Westcroft was the target. The next afternoon, Emily dozed on the couch in the safe house. Gabe sat at his laptop, scanning property records, tracing suspicious LLCs that pointed back to Westcroft. He found an entire labyrinth of shell companies. The man was likely laundering money, stashing questionable profits. Suddenly, Emily's phone rang. She picked it up groggily. The caller ID was Mom. Her expression soured. Should I answer? She asked Gabe. Go ahead. Put it on speaker. Emily accepted the call, setting the phone on the table. Hello? Rachel's shaky voice came through. Emily, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Listen, sweetie, I'm sorry for everything. Please come home. William isn't here. He's out of town. It's just me. We can talk. Figure this out as a family. Emily shot Gabe a skeptical glance. Gabe kept silent, letting Emily handle it. I'm fine where I am, Mom, Emily said, her tone guarded. I don't trust you right now. Rachel sniffled audibly. I made a mistake, okay? I was scared, lonely, everything happened so fast. But your father, you know how he is, Emily. He can be extreme. I want to fix things without letting him blow up our entire lives. Emily folded her good arm over her torso. He's not blowing anything up. He's protecting me, which is more than you did. A long silence. Then Rachel exhaled. You can't understand the position I'm in. William, he's been good to me financially. He opened doors for me. He gave me a chance to live, not just wait for your dad's occasional visits. I'm sorry it hurt you, but right now you need to help me calm your father. I don't want him to do something reckless. Gabe gave Emily a quick nod, indicating that he'd heard enough. Emily mustered a frosty tone. Too late, Mom. Dad's seen what happened to me. There's no going back. Good luck. She ended the call. The phone's screen went dark. Gabe could see Emily trembling with the aftershock of that conversation. I hate how she tries to blame you, she said quietly. Gabe gently squeezed her shoulder. That's her way of justifying her betrayal. Don't let it get to you. Days slipped into a week. Emily regained some strength, gradually adjusting to life hidden away. Gabe developed an even clearer plan. He would gather evidence of Westcroft's criminal activities, ensure it found its way into the hands of law enforcement or perhaps the media. He also had to ensure his daughter was safe from retribution. He practiced firing drills in the basement, reassembling and cleaning various firearms he'd stowed there. Emily would sometimes watch him work, her cast still on, wearing a worried expression. One night, as Gabe locked up the armory, Emily approached softly. Dad, I know you're intense. I've seen glimpses of it all my life, like when you came home from missions, that look in your eyes. But this feels different. You're scaring me a little. He looked down at her, face shadowed by the single overhead light. I'm sorry, he said, voice gentler. I've done things overseas I can't talk about, and I never wanted that side of me to touch you. But Westcroft forced my hand. I have to become what I'm trained to be. Her eyes glistened. Just promise you won't become worse than them. He swallowed. I promise I'll do what's necessary, and no more than that. But in the darkest corner of his mind, he wasn't sure he could keep that promise. The old rage, the soldier's thirst for retribution was creeping in. One morning, Emily was resting when Gabe felt the phone in his pocket buzz. It was an unknown caller. He answered gruffly. Yeah? Staff Sergeant Gabriel Pierce? A male voice asked. Something about the voice set Gabe's nerves on edge. Who's asking? He said in a low tone. A pause. Call me Dean. I work for Mr. Westcroft. We know you're back in town and harboring your daughter. Let's keep this civil, shall we? Gabe's anger surged. You're the one who let your men push her down the stairs. That's not exactly civil. Dean gave a condescending chuckle. An unfortunate misunderstanding. We'd like to rectify it. Mr. Westcroft wants to extend another invitation, an even bigger settlement if Emily remains silent. Perhaps your entire family can walk away with a tidy sum if you'll just avoid turning this into a scandal. Gabe's knuckles turned white around the phone. He thinks he can buy off attempted murder? Buy me off? He thinks money speaks louder than grudges. We're prepared to offer 7 figures, the man said calmly. That'll set you and your daughter up quite nicely, and you can return to whatever black ops corner of the world you crawled out of. Everyone wins. Gabe forced an even tone. Tell your boss I don't want his money, and if he tries to contact my daughter again, he'll regret it. A low sigh. Fine, have it your way. But let me warn you, men with your skill set are a dime a dozen in this city, and all it takes is one well-placed bullet to end your vengeance crusade. Don't push Mr. Westcroft, Sergeant. We're done. The line clicked dead. Gabe lowered the phone, seething. That was a direct threat. The gloves were off now. That evening, Gabe told Emily he had to step out for a while, instructing her to lock the door behind him. Don't open for anyone, he warned. I'll be back tonight. You'll be safe here. He headed downtown, slipping through alleyways, eventually stopping outside a certain high-rise office building that belonged to Westcroft. Security cameras panned the entrance. He wore a plain black baseball cap, hood up, eyes scanning for opportunities. Within minutes, he'd spotted a side door used by cleaning staff. Another half hour of observation revealed that the security presence was minimal. After 9 p.m., Gabe calmly picked the lock, his infiltration skills honed by years of covert missions, stepping into a service corridor. He moved quickly, quietly up the stairwell to the 12th floor, where Westcroft's personal suite was rumored to be. He found a locked door with a plaque that read, William F. Westcroft, CEO in brass letters. Gabe knelt, rummaging for his lockpick set. He stilled, hearing footsteps on the other side. A guard, maybe? He pressed himself against the wall. The footsteps receded. He went to work. The door's lock was advanced, but not advanced enough to beat a Black Ops veteran. After a few tense seconds, the tumbler clicked. He silently slipped inside, flicking on a small pen light. The office reeked of wealth. Mahogany desk, leather seats, a view of the city skyline from floor-to-ceiling windows. Gabe's light danced over the desk until he found what he was looking for. A top-of-the-line computer tower, locked in a special cabinet. Let's see what skeletons are in your digital closet, Gabe muttered, hooking up a USB infiltration device, developed by intelligence techs for missions exactly like this. It would run exploit scripts to bypass security, copying files to an encrypted drive Gabe carried in his pocket. As the device churned, Gabe scanned the office for physical documents. He found a locked drawer, forced it open with a thin crowbar. Inside were folders, real estate contracts, NDAs, receipts for suspicious transactions. Perfect. He snapped pictures of everything with a discreet, high-resolution pen camera. Then he carefully put it back, leaving no sign of forced entry except for the drawer's small scrape. He checked the infiltration device. Done. He ejected it, pocketed it, and swiftly wiped the system logs. Then he exited the office as silently as he came, locked it behind him, and disappeared into the stairwell, heart pounding with adrenaline. He was used to that old, familiar thrill, the surge of tension that accompanied clandestine infiltration. Once he was safely out on the street, blending with late-night pedestrians, he let a grim smile cross his features. You want a war, Westcroft? You've got one. By midnight, Gabe was back in the safe house's basement, hooking up the external drive to his own system. Emily watched from a distance. She couldn't sleep, so she stayed up. Curiosity piqued. On the screen, folder after folder popped up. Shell company accounts, deals that looked blatantly illegal. A few hidden camera videos, names of bribes. They were monstrous revelations. Emily stood behind Gabe's chair, cradling her cast. Dad, this is insane. He's paying off city officials, forging tax documents, blackmailing politicians. It's a web of corruption. Gabe nodded, lips a tight line. I can leak this to the authorities or to a few journalists who specialize in uncovering corruption. That alone would cause damage, but it won't be immediate or personal enough to satisfy me. She swallowed. You want to ruin him, don't you? He inhaled deeply. He threatened you. He threatened me. He disrespected the sanctity of our home. Yes, I want to tear down everything he's built and watch it burn. Emily closed her eyes, absorbing his words. What about Mom? She finally whispered. She's entangled in all this. If we blow it open, she'll be exposed too. A pang of guilt flickered across Gabe's features. For all her cruelty, Rachel was still the mother of his child, and a part of him, buried deep, had once loved her. She made her bed, he said softly. I'm sorry, Em. She chose her side. Emily nodded, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. She turned away, hugging her injured arm. Gabe rose, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Go get some rest, okay? This is a lot for you to process. She sniffed. What about you? He stared at the laptop with cold determination. I'll be here, making a plan. As the nights stretched on, Gabe assembled all the puzzle pieces. He had contacts who owed him favors, a small-time hacker who could discreetly release files to investigative journalists, an ex-prosecutor who specialized in RICO cases. Step by step, Gabe was orchestrating Westcroft's downfall, but something dark was stirring in his heart, the desire to confront Westcroft face to face, to break him physically. In Black Ops, Gabe had interrogated men who were dangerous to national security. He knew how to extract confessions, how to inflict pain with surgical precision. The father in him screamed for vengeance, a primal call to show no mercy. One afternoon, Emily found him cleaning a sniper rifle in the basement. She frowned deeply. Dad, do you really need that thing here? He didn't look up from the weapon. You can never be too prepared. Westcroft has ex-military bodyguards. If they track us here, I'll need an advantage. Emily hovered near the door, anxious. There's something in your eyes that scares me, Dad. You look like you're changing. He paused, letting out a ragged sigh. I've done terrible things for my country. I locked that side of me away, tried to keep it out of our family life. But to protect you, to punish Westcroft, I might have to tap into it again. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she stepped forward, resting her good hand on his shoulder. Just don't lose yourself. You're my dad. Gabe set down the rifle and pulled her into a gentle, one-armed hug. I promise I'll come back. This is just something I have to do. She nodded against his chest. I trust you. Finally, all was set in motion. The evidence was packaged and ready. Gabe had even gleaned from the emails that Westcroft would be hosting a private event at his mansion in a few days, some real estate investors flying in from overseas. That would be the perfect time for the first blow, an anonymous leak that triggered a media frenzy, overshadowing Westcroft's grand affair. But more than that, Gabe would be there, in the shadows or perhaps face to face, depending on how events unfolded. Late that night, with Emily asleep, Gabe stood in the safe house's small backyard, staring up at the moonless sky. The wind brushed across his short-cropped hair. 1,000 memories crowded him. Firefights in the desert, extraction missions in the jungle, nights spent in a sniper's nest waiting for a target to appear. Each time he had endured for a cause he believed in. Now the cause was personal, vengeance for his daughter. A deep breath filled his lungs. He felt the swirl of guilt, grief, and righteous fury. Rachel's betrayal, Westcroft's arrogance, the harm done to Emily, they all demanded retribution. He took out his phone, typed a message to an old contact. Execute leak, 48 hours. Then he typed another to Harris, his ex-Marine buddy. Need you on standby. Contact me tomorrow. He turned off the phone, slid it into his pocket. The final stage was about to begin. Stepping back inside the safe house, he moved quietly down the hall, checking on Emily. She was fast asleep, mouth slightly open, cast resting on a pillow. Gabe's chest tightened with protective love. He gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, making sure not to wake her. Then he retreated to the living room, sat in the dark, and let his mind race through the final details. There was no turning back. Too many lines had been crossed. He closed his eyes, envisioning Westcroft's face, that smug smirk. He pictured the moment Westcroft threatened Emily in the hospital. He remembered Rachel's sneer at the lobby, telling him he was just a soldier on borrowed time. He felt the rush of violent adrenaline course through his veins, the same rush he felt on a mission just before he pulled the trigger. He would tear that smug empire down piece by piece, and if Westcroft resisted, Gabe was prepared to do far worse. There in the darkness, every muscle in his body coiled with a lethal tension, he made a silent vow. They will regret hurting my daughter. At last, he rose from the couch. In the glow of a small lamp, he pulled on a tactical vest, loaded spare magazines, and checked the sidearm holstered at his waist. Quietly, methodically. He wasn't going out to kill Westcroft tonight. Not yet. But he would be ready for any escalation. This was a line he never thought he'd cross on American soil, becoming the villain in his own land. Yet revenge demanded it. He stared at his reflection in the dark TV screen. He looked older, colder, more dangerous. The upright soldier replaced by a looming menace in black. No moral qualms left. "Time to begin," he said under his breath. His voice was steady, calm, and terrifying. Staff Sergeant Gabe Pierce watched the flickering news report on his laptop screen late that evening, the harsh glow casting shadows across the cramped safe house living room. Headlines about a prominent real estate mogul's potential corruption scandal were splashed on every local station, triggered by the damning evidence Gabe had leaked days earlier. The media were in a frenzy. William Westcroft, previously admired for philanthropic gestures and high-profile deals, was now under scrutiny for money laundering, bribery, and more. But exposure alone wasn't enough. Gabe could feel it in the pit of his stomach, that roiling unrest that demanded a final confrontation. This man, the same one who had threatened his daughter, who had corrupted Gabe's wife, Rachel, was still walking free. Worse, Westcroft's arrogance had only grown. Instead of going underground after the leaked documents, he was hosting a lavish private party at his personal mansion that very night, as if daring the world to defy him. No doubt he was also trying to meet with lawyers and spin the narrative, confident that with enough money he could evade the law. Emily, Gabe's daughter, hovered nearby in the safe house kitchen, quietly reheating some leftover soup for herself. She still wore a cast on her left arms from the fall she'd endured when Westcroft's hired muscle shoved her down the stairs. The bruises on her face had faded to a pale yellow, but the memory of that night clearly still haunted her. A beep from Gabe's phone drew his attention. A brief text from an old ally in local law enforcement, tipping him off about Westcroft's heavy security presence at the mansion. Gabe read the text, jaw set, mind racing with possibilities. Emily walked over, gingerly setting the soup bowl on the table. "Dad?" she said softly. "You look like you're miles away." Gabe's eyes flicked to his daughter. "I've got word Westcroft's holding a big event tonight, trying to salvage his reputation in front of his investors. His estate is crawling with armed security. I think he's doubling down, telling the world he's untouchable." He paused, gaze sliding back to the phone. "I can't let him keep lording his power over us, over you." She swallowed, face pale. "So, you're going to confront him?" "Tonight," Gabe said, voice low and resolute. "I have to find whatever final pieces of incriminating evidence he's kept hidden in his personal study. The files we leaked were enough to start the investigation, but we need something truly decisive if we want to ensure he doesn't wriggle out with a high-priced defense team. My contact suggests there may be more. Private ledgers, blackmail materials. Locked away in his home office." Emily's spoon clattered softly into the bowl as she sat down. "Dad, promise me you won't go too far." "I'm afraid you might." She stopped, eyes welling with tears. "I'm afraid you might do something you'll regret." Gabe gently reached out, resting a hand over her cast. "I promise I'll do only what I have to. But remember, he tried to bribe you, threatened you, practically left you for dead. This isn't just business. He drew first blood against our family." She sniffled and squeezed his hand. "Just be careful. I don't want you shot or arrested or worse." He mustered a small smile. "I have a lot of experience with infiltration. I'll handle it. Stay here. Keep the doors locked." They talked a bit longer, going over emergency protocols. If Gabe didn't return by dawn, Emily was to contact his old Marine buddy, Harris, then get out of town, disappear until it was safe. The thought of anything happening to her fueled Gabe's determination. He would see this through, no matter the cost. Shadow over the mansion. By midnight, Gabe had driven his battered black SUV to a discreet vantage point on a hill overlooking Westcroft's palatial property. Rolling farmland and high hedges bordered the estate on all sides. The mansion, with its pristine white columns and expansive courtyard, glowed under floodlights. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway, glittering in the moonlight like jewels in some twisted crown. Through binoculars, Gabe counted at least a dozen security personnel posted around the front entrance, plus roving guards near the side gates. On the high stone perimeter walls, cameras panned every few seconds, capturing the approach from multiple angles. No doubt more men were stationed inside, especially near Westcroft's private office upstairs. Typically, a covert infiltration would require days of precise planning. But time was short. He needed those final documents now, before Westcroft found a way to hide them or flee the country. "I've done bigger infiltration jobs with less intel," Gabe muttered to himself, recalling Black Ops missions in remote war zones. This, however, was personal territory and personal stakes. He pulled on a black turtleneck, dark cargo pants, and a slim Kevlar vest beneath. Next came a sidearm holster with a suppressed pistol. He double-checked the extra magazines, each methodically loaded. Then, from a hidden compartment in the SUV's trunk, he retrieved a small bag of tools, a cutting-edge lockpick set, a glass cutter, a slim rope with grappling hook attachments, a compact night vision monocular. Standard kit for infiltration, although using it against an American civilian estate felt surreal. Or it would have, if that estate's owner hadn't tried to kill Gabe's daughter. He quietly exited the SUV, locked it, then slipped into the dense row of trees at the property's western edge. The night air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of music from the mansion's main hall, likely the party in full swing. Over the faint strains of classical instruments, Gabe could hear the occasional static-laced chatter of walkie-talkies from patrolling guards. He stayed low, moving from shadow to shadow. The property's external floodlights crisscrossed patches of lawn, making it impossible to simply sprint across. Instead, Gabe circled north, stepping carefully to avoid motion sensor beams near the fence. He found a blind spot. The camera on the corner pivoted just enough to leave a small gap in coverage every 15 seconds. When the camera turned away, Gabe tossed the slim grappling hook over the wall. It caught on something sturdy with a metallic clink. He counted 3 seconds, then yanked twice to ensure stability. Then he scaled up with practiced grace, hooking his boots into the cracks. At the top, he peeked over. 2 patrolling guards, each armed with sidearms, strolled about 50 yards away across the lush grass. He swung himself over, landing softly on the inside lawn. Adrenaline surged. Showtime, he thought. In the shadows. Detective work begins. Gabe pressed his body against the tall hedges, scanning for more guards. The pair he'd spotted moved on, disappearing around the corner of the mansion. Another had posted by the veranda steps. Gabe waited, breathing slow and steady. Moments like these reminded him of long nights in foreign deserts, concealed in some ruin, awaiting the perfect time to advance. He slipped from behind the hedges, crossing open ground in a low crouch. The veranda loomed ahead, ornate pillars, expensive patio furniture, and a set of towering French doors. Through the doors, Gabe glimpsed the swirling silhouette of elegantly dressed guests. This was clearly the main party area. To the left, a smaller wing jutted out, Westcroft's private domain. The office would likely be in that wing, away from prying eyes. Moving carefully, Gabe skirted the veranda entirely, hugging the building's side. The windows he passed glowed with warm light, but the heavy curtains inside were drawn, preventing any direct line of sight. He paused at a side entrance, a sturdy oak door with a digital lock panel. No good. Fiddling with a digital lock in the open air left him exposed. Instead, Gabe continued to the corner, where he recalled from stolen blueprints that a narrow terrace on the second floor led into Westcroft's study. If he could reach that terrace, he might slip in undetected. A drainage pipe offered a convenient route upward. Gabe tested its stability, then climbed swiftly. At the second-story ledge, he hauled himself over a decorative balustrade, landing softly on the small stone terrace. The curtains on the glass doors here were partially open, revealing a darkened interior, likely the unoccupied study. He gripped a glass cutter tool, carefully slicing a neat circle in one of the panes. The faint crackle of glass sounded impossibly loud in the hush of night. He held his breath, ears straining for footsteps. None came. He unlocked the door from the inside and slipped into the study. The smell of polished wood, leather-bound books, and expensive whiskey greeted him. A single desk lamp glowed near an imposing mahogany desk, but otherwise the large room was bathed in dimness. Floor-to-ceiling bookcases lined 2 walls, and a massive painting hung behind the desk. A stylized portrait of Westcroft himself, no doubt. The hush of the study contrasted starkly with the faint music drifting in from the distant hall. Gabe shut the door behind him. Now he was in enemy territory. Any noise or movement risked discovery by the mansion's staff or security. Methodically, he began searching. The desk drawers were locked, but his picks made short work of them. Inside, he found ledgers, bound in black leather. He flipped through, scanning for incriminating details. At a glance, it was exactly the sort of evidence that would bury Westcroft in court. Payments to unknown shell companies, references to bribes. Good. He'd copy or photograph them. Next, Gabe tried a tall cabinet behind the desk, also locked. Inside, he discovered files marked with cryptic abbreviations, plus a small steel box, presumably containing something valuable. He set it aside momentarily, carefully rummaging for anything referencing hush money payoffs or the assault on Emily. The overhead painting snagged his attention. It was hinged, concealing a wall safe behind it. Typical wealthy arrogance, Gabe thought grimly. He approached the safe, noting the fingerprint scanner and numeric keypad. Breaking that open quietly would be tough. He removed a specialized hacking device from his bag, the same used on Westcroft's office computer downtown. But before he could start, distant voices echoed in the corridor, getting louder. Gabe froze. He was sure he'd chosen a time when the study would be empty. A sharp female laugh, then a male voice. "He's never going to talk. The investigation won't find anything on me." The tone was unmistakably William Westcroft's, dripping with conceit. Damn, Gabe thought, quickly moving behind a tall bookcase that stuck out near the wall. From there, he had a partial view of the study doors. With any luck, Westcroft would merely pass by. But the footsteps grew closer. The study doors swung open. Light spilled in from the hallway as Westcroft strolled inside, accompanied by a tall, elegant woman in a sparkling silver dress. He was half turned toward her, swirling a glass of scotch in one hand, exuding the casual confidence of a man who owned everything around him. Gabe's heart thundered, but he remained perfectly still in the shadows. Westcroft set his glass on the desk. "Rebecca, my dear, give me a moment. There's something I need to retrieve from my private files." He motioned at the woman to wait by the door. She pouted dramatically but complied, leaning against the doorframe, shoulders bare under the silver dress. Gabe's mind raced. He needed to remain hidden, or at least wait until the woman left. The presence of an innocent bystander complicated a violent confrontation. He had no idea if she was truly innocent, but she didn't look like a bodyguard. Westcroft tapped at the safe behind the painting. The beep of the fingerprint scanner sounded. The painting swung open, revealing a sleek metallic door. He pressed his thumb and typed a code. The safe clicked. Westcroft pulled out a manila folder and a flash drive. He turned to the woman with a smug grin. "Just some backup documentation. The press is swarming, but all they have are rumors. With these, I can keep certain officials in line. Let them know I have their skeletons. Once this fiasco blows over, I'll come out clean. My money and connections run deeper than any reporter's curiosity." Rebecca gave a tinkling laugh. "I believe you. Everyone says you're unstoppable." She eyed him with a sort of predatory admiration. Gabe clenched his jaw, every fiber of his being wanting to leap out, wrest the folder from Westcroft's hands. Instead, he forced himself to remain still. He'd never get a better chance to see what was in that folder. Wait until the woman leaves, he told himself, controlling his breathing. Unfortunately, that moment never came. Westcroft turned abruptly, scanning the room. His eyes fell on the cabinet, still ajar. His carefree smile died. "What the—" Rebecca blinked. "What is it?" Westcroft strode to the cabinet, noticing the lock had been picked. Then he whipped around, eyes narrowing. "Someone's been in here." Gabe realized the ruse was up. He couldn't remain hidden without Westcroft summoning security. He rolled his shoulders, inhaling quietly, then stepped out from behind the bookcase, gun drawn but aimed low. "It's me," Gabe said in a cold, measured tone. "Should have guessed you'd come here tonight, you arrogant bastard." Rebecca gasped, stumbling backward. Westcroft's eyes flared with shock before twisting into fury. "Pierce, you have some nerve." Gabe took a step forward, pistol raised. "Hands where I can see them. Both of you." He briefly cut a glance toward the trembling woman in the silver dress. "You out! Get out of here. This isn't your fight." She looked frantically between Gabe and Westcroft. "William!" Westcroft barked. "Stay where you are, Rebecca." Then to Gabe. "You really think you can just walk in here and hold me at gunpoint? My men are all over the estate." "That's your problem," Gabe said. "You think your men can save you from everything. Think again. I came for the evidence you keep stashed. That ledger, that flash drive, whatever else you've got, you're done." Westcroft sneered, tossing the folder onto the desk. "You think you'll stop me from countersuing or covering up your own crimes? You attacked my property. You and your daughter are meddling in matters beyond your comprehension. If you so much as blink wrong, you'll be behind bars for armed trespassing." Gabe's jaw tensed. "Cut the bravado. We both know you tried to kill my daughter. You bribed her, threatened her, and she ended up in the hospital because of your scum security. I want a confession. Or better yet, I can just dig through your files, turn them over to the FBI. Either way, you'll burn." Rebecca trembled, edging toward the door. "William, I don't want any part of this," she whispered, voice shaking. "He's got a gun. He's dangerous." Westcroft's lips curled in contempt, but he waved a dismissive hand. Fine, go, wait outside. She didn't need further prompting, slipping out the door in a flash of silver, leaving the two men alone in the tense hush of the study. Confrontation and the call for reinforcements. A beat of silence, then Westcroft pressed a button on his desk phone, leaning forward as if he no longer feared the gun. Security to the study. Intruder alert. His eyes never left Gabe's. You think I can't stall you until they arrive? Gabe advanced swiftly, smashing the phone with the butt of his pistol. The device cracked, sparks flying. Westcroft recoiled, but too slowly. Gabe's left hand shot out, grabbing Westcroft by the collar and slamming him against the desk. The folder and flash drive scattered across the surface. You're going to regret everything you did to Emily, Gabe hissed. Now stand still. But Westcroft had more fight than Gabe expected. He twisted free, a surprising burst of agility, and shoved Gabe's arm aside, knocking the pistol from his grip. The weapon clattered across the floor. Then Westcroft lashed out, hooking a punch at Gabe's ribs. Gabe took the blow with a grunt, pivoting to deliver a swift knee to Westcroft's abdomen. Westcroft staggered, gasping. The tension spiked. From the hallway, heavy footsteps and shouts announced the arrival of security. Gabe needed to secure the evidence and make an exit, or deal with the onslaught. He lunged for the desk, snatching the manila folder. Westcroft lunged as well, grabbing Gabe around the waist. The two men slammed into the side of an armchair, toppling it. The folder's contents spilled across the floor. In the heat of grappling, Westcroft roared, "You'll never see your daughter again if you kill me! My men will hunt you to the ends of the earth!" Rage flared in Gabe. He hammered an elbow down on Westcroft's shoulder. "If your men try, they'll end up like you. Broken. Now shut up!" 4 security guards burst in, weapons raised. "Freeze!" Gabe had no time to retrieve his pistol from the floor. Westcroft seized the moment to scramble backward, panting, hair disheveled. "Handcuff him," he snapped. "He's ex-military, extremely dangerous. Don't let him out." The lead guard advanced with a pair of metal cuffs. Gabe raised his hands, feigning surrender. The guard seized one of Gabe's wrists, attempting to yank it behind his back, but Gabe exploded into motion. He pivoted, twisted the guard's arm, and sent him crashing into a second guard, toppling them both like dominoes. The third guard tried to punch Gabe in the kidney. Gabe sidestepped, hooking the man's leg out from under him. The fourth guard aimed his pistol. Gabe lunged low, sweeping the man's ankles, causing the shot to go wide. A bullet shattered a glass cabinet, sending shards across the carpet. Westcroft cursed under his breath, stepping away. He grabbed a phone from the hallway, presumably to call more men.
"I need backup in the study. Immediately."
The guard that Gabe had thrown first shook his head, disoriented, but scrambled to his feet.
"He's over here!"
Another guard rose, brandishing a baton. It was 4-on-1 in close quarters, exactly the scenario Gabe had been trained to handle. He elbowed the baton aside, driving a fist into the guard's temple. The man dropped. Gabe then snatched a fallen sidearm from the floor, spun, and fired a single round at the next guard's knee. The guard collapsed with a scream. The remaining 2, seeing the swiftness of Gabe's brutality, backed up, uncertain. Westcroft, still at the threshold, hollered at them to, "Just shoot him!" But they hesitated, pinned by Gabe's unwavering aim. Gabe glared at them. "Drop it if you want to live." The 2 exchanged frightened looks, then tossed their weapons aside, hands up. Westcroft's face twisted in fury. "Cowards! You're 4 men and he's—" Before he could finish, Gabe aimed a shot at the open door, forcing Westcroft to duck away. Then Gabe rushed forward, slammed the heavy door shut, and locked it from inside. He had only seconds before more guards arrived, or Westcroft found another route. He grabbed the folder's scattered pages, stuffing them haphazardly under his vest. The flash drive was near the desk. He seized it and pocketed it. One of the disarmed guards tried to tackle Gabe from behind in a last-ditch effort. Gabe sidestepped, grabbed the guard's collar, and flung him headfirst into the desk. The guard crumpled, dazed. The other conscious guard retreated, dragging his wounded comrade away, glaring with fear and hate. Gabe pressed his ear to the door. Shouts and stomping boots approached from the corridor. No exit that way. Instead, he rushed to the balcony doors he'd used to enter. Flinging them open, he stepped onto the terrace. Over the distant roofline, headlights flickered, signifying more security vehicles arriving at the main gate. A siren-like alarm began wailing across the estate grounds. Time to go, Gabe thought. He looked over the balustrade to the grounds below. Guards with flashlights swept the area. He ducked back, scanning for another route. He glimpsed a narrow ledge leading around to the corner of the mansion. Maybe if he could creep along that ledge, he'd reach an unguarded portion of the lawn. Gunshots shattered the glass behind him. Gabe cursed, flattening himself. More guards had arrived in the study, firing at him from inside. He returned 2 quick shots, forcing them back. Then he hoisted himself onto the ledge. Step by step, he edged along the ornate facade, wind whipping at him. 30 feet below, the watchers patrolled, guns at the ready. The escape turned pursuit. Gabe managed to slip around to the far side of the mansion, out of direct line of the study windows. He spotted a spot where the stone architecture jutted out enough to provide footholds. With a final breath, he let himself drop, landing in a roll on a patch of manicured hedge that softened his fall. He grit his teeth at the jarring impact. No time to dwell on it. Flashlight beams were crisscrossing. He ducked low, sprinting in bursts behind decorative shrubs. Another shot cracked the silence. A bullet whizzed by. A guard had spotted him from a second-floor window. Gabe kept moving, adrenaline spiking. At last, he reached the perimeter wall. He reattached his grappling hook line from earlier, scaling quickly. A guard on the inside yard shouted for him to halt. Gabe hopped over, landing outside with a muffled grunt. In the distance, an engine roared to life. Headlights swept across the estate's main driveway. Gabe squinted, recognizing the silhouette of a luxury SUV peeling away from the mansion. Through a gap in the wrought iron gates, he glimpsed the driver. Even in the darkness, that profile was unmistakable. William Westcroft himself, fleeing the chaos in a hurry. "So you're running," Gabe muttered. It made sense. Westcroft might guess that Gabe had stolen critical documents. Perhaps he was heading to another safe house. Or maybe he wanted to chase Gabe down on the open road with backup. Either way, Gabe didn't intend to let him escape. This man had come too close to destroying Gabe's family. Tonight, one way or another, it ended. Gabe sprinted for his own SUV, parked beneath a cluster of trees. He yanked open the door, tossed the stolen documents onto the passenger seat, and gunned the engine. Gravel spat from the tires as he tore off, eyes locked on the pale glow of Westcroft's headlights receding along the rural road. The main gate was wide open now, guards too busy dealing with the alarm to block his path. The high-speed showdown. The chase began on a winding 2-lane country highway. Westcroft's SUV, a top-end black Cadillac Escalade, had a powerful engine, roaring ahead at near-impossible speeds. Gabe's older, rugged SUV struggled to keep up at first, but he pressed the pedal to the floor, adrenaline fueling every sharp turn. Headlights cut through the pitch darkness, illuminating farmland and sparse trees on either side. They raced deeper into the countryside. Occasionally, Westcroft's brake lights flared as he careened around sharp bends, nearly losing control. Gabe expertly handled his own vehicle, drawing upon countless hours of tactical driving training. The wind howled past, the engine's roar mingling with the pounding of his heart. 1 mile blurred into 2, then 3. The moon provided scant light, but Gabe stayed locked on Westcroft's tail. Ahead, the road snaked up into the hills, where steep drop-offs overlooked ravines and rocky cliffs. Gabe recognized the area from old topographical maps, a dangerous route, full of hairpin turns that overlooked deep canyons. Westcroft must have realized he couldn't outrun Gabe on these winding roads. He rolled down a window and muzzle flashes flared, shots fired back at Gabe. Bullets pinged off the hood, one smashing the windshield in a spiderweb of cracks. Gabe ducked, controlling the wheel with one hand while drawing his pistol with the other. He fired through the ruined windshield at the Escalade's tires. The shot missed, ricocheting off the asphalt. "Damn," Gabe hissed, focusing on the next turn. The SUV skidded as he took the corner too fast. He righted it just in time, hearing the screech of tires from Westcroft's vehicle up ahead. The road curved again. Westcroft managed to keep his lead, but not by much. Suddenly, Westcroft jerked the wheel, swerving to block Gabe's path. Gabe braked hard, narrowly avoiding a collision. The two vehicles fishtailed across the narrow lane, nearly colliding with the flimsy roadside guardrail. Gabe wrenched the wheel left, scraping the side of his SUV against Westcroft's Escalade. Metal screeched. Sparks flew. For a split second, the two drivers locked eyes through their windows, Gabe's face set in grim determination. Westcroft's twisted in hateful desperation. Then Westcroft accelerated again, pulling ahead. Gabe refused to let go. He rammed the rear bumper of the Escalade, causing it to swerve dangerously near the guardrail. The hillside loomed on the left, a sheer drop on the right. One wrong move could send either man plummeting. Up ahead, the road curved sharply, hugging a cliff edge. A sign read, "Danger, sharp curve, overlook point." Westcroft's brake lights flared as he tried to maintain control around the bend. Gabe seized the moment, ramming the Escalade again from the side. The heavier Cadillac lurched, fishtailing. Westcroft overcorrected, and the SUV slammed into a wooden barrier at the road's edge, breaking through. Still half on the road, half teetering, Westcroft's SUV threatened to slide over the cliff. Steam hissed from its damaged engine block, headlights illuminating the yawning darkness beyond. Gabe skidded to a stop a dozen yards behind him, breath ragged. He jumped out, pistol at the ready. "Westcroft!" he shouted. Inside the Escalade, Westcroft was still behind the wheel, dazed, face streaked with blood from a cut on his forehead. Broken glass shimmered around him. He blinked, turning the key as if trying to reverse away from the precipice, but the tires spun uselessly in the rubble. The engine whined, coughed smoke. Gabe approached cautiously, gun trained. At the cliff's edge, the night wind whipped at his hair and the dull roar of distant water echoed from below. The moon illuminated the battered SUV perched precariously, half its front end over the cliff. One wrong shift and the whole vehicle could tumble. Westcroft glared through the cracked windshield, coughing. "You maniac! You'll kill us both!" Gabe kept his pistol aimed. "Get out, now, on your knees!" For a moment, it seemed Westcroft would comply. Then he snarled, leaning across the passenger seat. He emerged with a short-barreled shotgun, pumping it once. The sound echoed in the night. Gabe dove behind the cover of his own hood as buckshot tore through the air, peppering the area where Gabe had stood a second before. Clutching the wheel with one hand, the shotgun in the other, Westcroft tried to edge the Escalade backward. The tires squealed, rocking precariously. Gabe popped up from cover, firing twice at the Escalade's grill. Sparks flew. Another shotgun blast forced Gabe to duck. The SUV lurched, the front end tipping a bit further over the cliff. Westcroft spat curses, refusing to abandon the vehicle, possibly thinking he could still drive away. Gabe realized this was madness. Westcroft might prefer to drag them both to their deaths, rather than surrender. Summoning all his nerve, Gabe sprinted forward. The shotgun roared again, a blast grazing Gabe's arm. Pain flared, but he didn't stop. He reached the driver's side door, yanked it open, and grabbed the shotgun barrel, forcing it upward. Westcroft tried to push him away. They struggled in the half-wrecked SUV, the precarious tilt making every movement dangerous. One slip and the Escalade would tip completely. "Let go!" Westcroft bellowed, face contorted. "I'll kill you, Pierce!" Gabe wrenched the shotgun free, delivering a brutal punch to Westcroft's face. Blood sprayed from Westcroft's lip. The blow stunned him, and he slumped momentarily against the seat. Gabe tore the shotgun from his grip, tossing it out. Then, with a savage kick, Gabe planted his boot on Westcroft's chest, forcing him back. Westcroft coughed, wiping blood from his mouth. You psycho! You threatened my daughter. You tried to kill me just now." Gabe's voice trembled with a lethal edge. "Do you have any final words?" Westcroft's eyes darted, stricken with real fear. You'll go to prison, you know that? The moment anyone finds out you murdered me, your daughter's life is ruined. She'll have no father." Gabe's jaw tightened. "Better no father than a father who lets you walk free to hurt her again. If I walk away now, the system might let you off. You're cunning with lawyers, bribes. I can't take that risk." Westcroft opened his mouth to retort, but Gabe had already braced his shoulder against the Escalade's doorframe. With a fierce push, he rocked the SUV. The front end slid another foot over the cliff. Westcroft's eyes went wild. No, wait! Too late. Metal groaned as the weight of the engine dragged the vehicle forward. Gabe jumped back, letting the slope do the rest. The Escalade tipped, front plunging downward, wheels spinning in midair. A horrible screech echoed as the entire SUV slid off the edge. Westcroft's screams cut through the night, followed by a thunderous crash as the vehicle hit the rocky outcroppings below. An orange fireball erupted moments later, casting a lurid glow against the cliff face. Gabe stood at the edge, breathing hard, the heat of the explosion warming his face even from that distance. For several seconds, he just stared, adrenaline coursing through him, mind numb. Then the flames subsided into smaller bursts. The hush of the countryside returned, broken only by the crackle of burning metal. He winced, pressing a hand to the graze wound on his upper arm from the shotgun blast. Blood oozed between his fingers. The pain reminded him he was still alive, and that, in the eyes of the law, he had just committed homicide, even if it was done in self-defense or in the heat of vengeance. He couldn't remain in the country. Investigations would follow, and no matter how incriminating the evidence on Westcroft, Gabe had no illusions about his own innocence in that final, fateful push. This is the cost, he thought grimly, stepping away from the cliff's edge, scanning the horizon for any sign of approaching lights. No immediate sirens or vehicles. But it wouldn't be long. He wiped sweat and blood from his brow, turning towards his battered SUV. The final call. It took Gabe several minutes to calm his ragged breathing enough to drive. He rummaged in the back for a spare shirt, pressing it against his injured arm to staunch the bleeding. The stolen documents he'd risked his life for still lay on the passenger seat. They were a testament to Westcroft's guilt, but also to Gabe's final mission. As the engine turned over, he grabbed his phone, fighting back the wave of pain that threatened to dull his senses. He dialed Emily's number. On the third ring, she picked up, voice trembling with worry. "Dad? Oh God, Dad, are you okay? I've been so scared." Gabe swallowed hard, eyes closing briefly. "I'm alive, Em. I got him." A moment of silence. Then her voice quivered with emotion, half relief, half something else. "What do you mean you got him? Where are you?" He exhaled slowly, forcing the words. "Westcroft's gone. He won't hurt us anymore, but there were complications. I had to deal with him permanently." He paused, hearing her sharp intake of breath. "Listen to me carefully. I have to leave the country, immediately. If I stay, they'll charge me with homicide, maybe more. You know how this will go. Even if we argue self-defense, his associates, or the cops, someone could twist it." Her voice caught. "Dad, you're just leaving? Where will you go?" He gritted his teeth against the throbbing pain in his arm. "I have contacts overseas. I can vanish for a while until I figure out how to handle the legal mess. I'll be in touch. Secret phone numbers, maybe an encrypted email. I can't risk them tracking me through normal channels." Emily let out a shaky sob. "So you're going to disappear again, just like all those times you were on missions?" "This time is different," Gabe said, heart heavy. "I'm doing it to protect you. The evidence we have will confirm Westcroft's crimes, and people will label me a vigilante, but they can't hurt you if I'm not around to target. Use that evidence if you need to. Harris can help you handle the media. He'll know what to do." Her breath quavered on the line. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," Gabe managed, tears pricking his eyes. "I promise I'll contact you once I'm settled, once it's safe. You might have to lie. Say you don't know where I went or that you haven't spoken to me. The documents will speak for themselves about how evil Westcroft was. Focus on your recovery, your future. Live, Em." He heard her stifle another sob. Okay, I love you, Dad." A lump formed in Gabe's throat. "I love you too. I'm sorry it had to come to this. Remember everything I taught you about staying safe." "Come back for me," she whispered. "Someday?" "Someday," Gabe said. "When it's safe. Until then, be strong." He ended the call, letting the phone slip onto the passenger seat. For a few agonizing seconds, he just sat there, clutching the steering wheel, fighting the wave of grief. Then he inhaled, turned on the headlights, and drove away from the crash site, leaving behind the distant glow of the flaming wreck at the bottom of the cliff. Epilogue. Gabe's SUV rumbled along a lonely back road, heading nowhere and everywhere, fleeing from the scene of final vengeance. In the rearview mirror, he could see only darkness, no cars pursuing, no signs of immediate chase. Yet he knew, in time, the authorities or Westcroft's remaining hired guns would come sniffing. They'd find the wreck, the remains, piece together that a chase had occurred. Maybe they'd suspect he was behind it, maybe not. But soon enough, questions would arise. He had contacts across the border, old allies from covert missions, people who owed him favors. He would vanish into that underworld, making sure Emily was never implicated. If the day came when the law granted him clemency or the investigations concluded that Westcroft's death was the result of his own wrongdoing, perhaps Gabe could return to American soil. But he couldn't count on that. For now, he accepted the price of his daughter's safety and the justice he'd dispensed. The SUV's engine droned softly as he replayed the events of the night, the infiltration, the fight in the study, the frantic chase, the horrifying moment at the cliff. He pictured Westcroft's face in those final seconds, panic twisting into terror. The memory made Gabe's stomach churn. He had long since been hardened to violence in war zones, but this was personal vengeance, outside official channels. It felt heavier on his conscience, laced with guilt over the man he'd become. Yet he also felt a strange sense of relief. Emily was safe. The threat was gone. The documents, along with the earlier leak, ensured Westcroft's empire would collapse under legal scrutiny. Rachel, for her part, might or might not face consequences. Gabe's marriage was already beyond saving. He felt only a hollow ache where once there might have been sorrow. She had chosen her betrayal. Now she'd face the fallout. As Gabe turned off onto a secluded dirt road, he glimpsed the first faint glow of dawn in the east. Perfect. He would reach a private airstrip soon, where an old pilot friend could smuggle him out on a small plane. Another call, another favor. He'd pay any price for passage. He told himself it was only temporary. Maybe one day he and Emily would reunite in a calmer time, a safer place where no one threatened their family. The sun's first rays crested the horizon, illuminating the dusty windshield. Gabe pressed down on the accelerator, ignoring the throbbing in his wounded arm. In his side mirror, the last vestiges of the night receded, symbolic of Westcroft's final hour. He drove on, face set in resolute lines, carrying the weight of his actions. The Black Ops soldier had become something more, a man who took the law into his own hands. And for better or worse, he could never go back to the life he'd had before. Still, one faint hope remained in his heart, that Emily, free from the shadows of betrayal and threats, would build a life she deserved. That thought alone carried him forward as he disappeared into the dawning day, leaving behind a smoldering wreck at the bottom of a cliff and the echoes of revenge that had reshaped both their destinies forever. Life often unfolds in unexpected ways, leading us down paths we never imagined. Before I found myself in the quiet solitude of my family farm, I was just another face in the bustling world, struggling to keep my marriage afloat while working tirelessly to provide a stable life. My days were a haze of bus routes, passengers, and routine, but the nights were lonelier than I dared admit. Somewhere along the line, I lost the connection I once cherished with my wife, Natalie. She was the center of my world, and her betrayal left me adrift. It was during those turbulent years that I made choices I can't undo. Anger and heartbreak clouded my judgment, culminating in an incident that changed the trajectory of my life forever. Prison was a harsh teacher, but it was also a place of clarity. It taught me resilience and forced me to confront my own shortcomings. By the time I returned home, the man who once clung to fleeting dreams of happiness was gone, replaced by someone seeking solace in simplicity and isolation. A philosopher once said that humanity is always hopeful for a brighter future, though I doubt he envisioned someone like me when making that observation. I sat in my dimly lit kitchen, chewing on a cold steak paired with crackers and milk, a habit more for comfort than health. While it wasn't the epitome of a balanced diet, my health numbers were fine, so I stuck with what I enjoyed. For 4 years, I'd lived alone. My wife had left me for another man while I was serving a prison sentence. Since then, I'd embraced solitude, venturing out only for my job as a milling machine operator. The house I lived in had been passed down through generations, from my grandfather to my father and now to me. Officially, I was Nathaniel Johnson III, though I never used the title. My parents had retired to South Carolina, leaving me as the sole occupant, aside from their occasional summer visits. Natalie, my ex-wife, still lived nearby, but our paths never crossed. My property stretched across 92 acres, half of it wooded. The woods were my refuge, where I spent most of my free time either working or wandering. There was a peace in the whispering pines, a balm for the bitterness life had left me with. Even on stormy days, when the wind howled through the trees, I found solace. It seemed to echo the darker thoughts that sometimes clouded my mind. The open fields on the land were leased to a farmer who kept them maintained. Along the west edge of the fields ran a line of sugar maples leading to a small sugar house. 10 acres of maple trees sloped toward it, forming a mature sugar bush that I diligently cared for. In spring, the sap flowed through pipelines to the sugar shack, where it was boiled down into golden syrup, filling the air with its sweet aroma. As I sat reflecting, a sputtering car engine interrupted my thoughts. I looked out the window to see an old vehicle rolling to a stop in the lane leading from the road. Usually, kids used the lane as a secluded hangout, but this car hadn't gone far. A petite woman stepped out, circled the car, and returned carrying a small child in her arms. They started walking toward my house. The woman spotted me standing at the door and walked toward the house with a hesitant yet determined stride. She had curly brown hair, wore snug jeans and a yellow top that fit just a bit too tightly, highlighting her figure, and moved with a kind of understated grace. The child in her arms, a little girl of about 3, was dressed in neat, casual clothes similar to her mother's, their shared appearance making it obvious they were family. As she approached, her expression carried a mix of uncertainty and hope. Her car had broken down at the edge of my property, and she needed to leave it there for a while. The narrow dirt road leading through the woods could still accommodate other vehicles, so she thought it wouldn't be a problem. Her immediate concern, however, was the distance to town, about 3 miles, and the challenge of making the trek, especially with her young daughter in tow. At this hour, the road wasn't likely to see much traffic, and most vehicles passing through would be heading away from town. The little girl grew restless and began to fuss. Her mother tried to soothe her, promising they'd find food when they reached town. But with 3 miles to cover and the child's hunger mounting, it was clear they would need something sooner. I invited them inside, offering to put together a quick meal despite not being prepared for company. Grateful but apologetic, the woman accepted the offer. She introduced herself as Isabel Cosgood and settled at the table, placing the child on her lap. While I prepared eggs and toast, the little girl reached for a small stack of crackers on the table, her hunger making her eager. Isabel gently stopped her, reminding her to wait for the meal. I told her to let the child have some crackers if she was that hungry, and mentioned there was milk in the fridge. As I worked in the kitchen, Isabel glanced around. Her curiosity about the absence of a feminine touch in the house led her to ask about my wife. The question hit a raw nerve. The disarray of the house, dusty surfaces, scattered belongings, and minimal upkeep made it clear no woman lived here. I explained defensively that I managed the bare essentials, tackling chores only when they became unbearable. To soften the tension, I added that I once kept a reasonably tidy home. Realizing she had touched a sensitive topic, Isabel quickly apologized, assuring me that she hadn't meant to pry. I pulled out 2 frying pans and started cooking. In one, I placed 2 sausage patties and a couple of bacon strips. The other I used to brown 3 slices of buttered bread on both sides. Once the bread was ready, I cracked an egg into the pan, broke the yolk, and pressed the toast into it for a quick, hearty meal. Isabel watched and offered to help, mentioning that her mother used to make something similar. She was excited to share the experience with her daughter, Nora, telling her to save her appetite for the treat. While Isabel cooked the second egg, I tended to the bacon and sausage. When she finished, I told her to eat while it was hot, then prepared the last piece of toast and egg for her plate. By the time we were done, night had fully settled, and it was clear that Isabel and her child wouldn't make it to town. Without transportation and nowhere to stay, they had little choice. I suggested they spend the night in one of the upstairs bedrooms. The linens might be stale, but it was the best I could offer. I explained that I'd be leaving soon for my night shift and wouldn't return until morning. They'd have the place to themselves and could lock the door after I left. Isabel was surprised at my willingness to trust a stranger, especially one I knew so little about. I shrugged off her concern, pointing out that her broken-down car wasn't going anywhere. She had shared her name, and she was clearly a decent person. Clean, respectful, and with a child to care for. None of my possessions mattered much, and my heart, I admitted, had grown too cold to risk being hurt again. I left her to her thoughts and retreated to my room to prepare for work, shutting the door behind me. As I changed into my work clothes, frustration crept in. Why had I let them in? Isabel wasn't as striking as my ex-wife, but there was a warmth in her smile, a neighborly familiarity that caught me off guard. She had a friendly demeanor, and her daughter was undeniably adorable. I tried to push the thoughts aside, but they lingered as I heard her climbing the stairs. I checked the clock and realized I'd lingered too long, lost in thought. I called out to let her know I was leaving and wished her good night. From the top of the stairs, she thanked me, adding that she didn't believe my heart was as cold as I claimed. She thought there might still be some warmth hidden beneath the surface. I didn't respond and headed to work. Operating machines had become second nature to me, a skill I picked up during my time in prison. 4 years ago, I had been sentenced to 3 to 5 years, but served just over 2 before being released. The charge stemmed from an incident where I lost control. My wife, Natalie, had been unfaithful, and I took my anger out on the man she was with. While lying in my prison bunk, I often questioned why I didn't confront her instead. Maybe she anticipated that too, as she quickly filed for and received a restraining order after the incident. Before my incarceration, I had worked as a bus driver. On the day everything unraveled, I was covering a route for a sick colleague. During a stop, I spotted Natalie entering a motel. When her car was still there an hour later, I parked the bus and waited. My passengers were confused, but I silenced their questions with a sharp tone. 10 minutes later, the motel door opened, and a man stepped out. Rage overtook me. I dragged him to the ground and unleashed everything I had. He was larger than me, but my fury gave me the upper hand. Natalie ran out, screaming for me to stop, but she couldn't leave with my bus blocking her car. By the time I was done, the man was barely conscious. Natalie, realizing she couldn't escape, retreated to the bus, hoping to stay safe among the passengers. Several of them called the police as I climbed back into the driver's seat. I resumed the route, telling the remaining passengers to signal when they reached their stop. By the time the police intercepted the bus, most had gotten off. Natalie, panicked and cornered, clung to the safety of the remaining riders. In the aftermath, I lost my job for abandoning the bus schedule, though I argued I'd fulfilled my responsibilities by continuing the route. The attack cost me my freedom for a time, but I didn't regret making the man pay for his actions. His knee was so badly damaged, it required replacement. A small victory in a situation that had cost me everything. During my 6th month in prison, I was notified about a civil lawsuit filed against me by the man I had attacked. He was demanding $2 million for the injuries I inflicted. The absurdity of it made me laugh. I was a former bus driver with no assets worth suing over. Soon after, word got back to me that the man had been hospitalized for another knee replacement, following a beating by unknown individuals. Rumors spread that I had orchestrated the attack from my cell, but no evidence supported this claim. Faced with intimidation and fear for his health, he dropped the lawsuit. I hadn't spoken to Natalie since the incident that led to my imprisonment. She lingered in the back of my mind, though I tried to suppress those thoughts. We had met in Boston shortly after I returned from the service. I attended a dance honoring veterans, dressed in my uniform, and she caught my eye immediately. She was tall, slender, and carried herself with polished elegance. Her well-maintained appearance reflected her independent wealth. By the end of the evening, we were mutually captivated, and I postponed my trip home by 3 weeks to spend time with her. Eventually, she followed me back to my small hometown, claiming she had always dreamed of farm life. Reality hit hard when she realized the farm couldn't financially sustain us, even after my parents retired and moved south. The physical labor and limited income wore on her, and I moved us into town, taking a bus driving job to make ends meet. Her dissatisfaction grew, and the divorce came swiftly after I caught her with another man. I gladly signed the papers, wanting nothing more to do with her. Thanks to my lawyer, the farm remained mine, and Natalie walked away with little. She seemed unbothered given her wealth and the financial support of her new partner, Nicholas Grisholm. During my incarceration, I learned a valuable trade: operating computer-guided milling machines. The prison work program offered training, and I applied myself fully. By the time I was released, I was skilled enough to secure a job in my hometown, where such expertise was in demand. The factory manager, himself no stranger to marital betrayal, hired me after I passed a skills test. Working the night shift suited me. I preferred staying out of the public eye and avoiding unnecessary attention. That night at the mill, my mind wandered. Much of the work involved monitoring the machine after setup, leaving time for reflection. My thoughts shifted from the man I had beaten to the unexpected guests I'd taken in, Isabel and her daughter Nora. Isabel seemed young, likely in her mid-20s, though her composure suggested maturity. Her calm acceptance of her situation struck me as unusual, almost serene. I found myself curious about her story. On the way home, I stopped to buy groceries. The house barely had enough food for me, let alone 3 people. I caught myself wondering if Isabel might stay a while. The idea of having someone to talk to and simply share a meal with was oddly appealing. It had been years since I felt anything close to companionship. The scent of coffee greeted me as I stepped inside. Isabel was setting a cup on the table when I hung my cap by the door. She had made pancakes, though she admitted uncertainty about the quality of the baking powder, which was long expired. It didn't matter. The syrup, made from my own trees, was fresh and perfect. As we ate, she asked about my time alone. I explained that while I had lived alone for 2 years, the 2 years prior were spent in prison. Her curiosity turned to the reason for my incarceration, and I assured her I hadn't harmed Natalie. My anger had been directed solely at her lover. Isabel's reaction was surprising. She commended me for standing up for myself, even recounting her own revenge on her cheating ex's lover by yanking out a clump of hair. Her candidness made me laugh. "Well," I said, "aren't we quite the pair?" Laughter filled the room, sparking a contagious joy. Even little Nora, amused by the sound of our laughter, began tapping her feet against the table leg, giggling along. It struck me then that it was the first time in over a year I'd laughed like that. The sensation was refreshing, almost foreign, and it felt good. Breakfast had been delicious. Isabel had made pancakes, bacon, and sausage, and as she carried the dishes to the sink, I asked about her plans. She explained that she had a job interview in town later that day. An older woman was looking for a roommate and had offered to watch Nora once Isabel secured work. In the meantime, she'd help out around the woman's house to earn her keep. Her biggest challenge now was finding a way into town. Curious, I asked Isabel her age. She was 23, which surprised me given how composed and mature she seemed. I shared that I was 28, though life had worn me down to the point of feeling much older. Our brief exchange turned reflective, leading me to ask a bold question. Would she consider working for me? I explained that I could pay her to keep house and care for Nora, emphasizing that I wasn't looking for anything beyond professional help. I mentioned the car sitting unused in my barn, which she could drive while hers was being repaired. Additionally, I offered to teach her gardening to keep her occupied in her spare time. Isabel seemed uncertain, hesitant to commit, but I reassured her there were no hidden expectations. My life upstairs had been untouched for months, and I intended to keep it that way. I suggested she think it over while I caught some sleep, promising to discuss it further at lunch. Isabel asked if she could call her mother and explore the property. I agreed, even offering references from my Christmas card list, though I joked that calling them would likely bring a parade of curious visitors to meet her. With a smile, I thanked her for breakfast and retired to bed. By noon, I was up, cleaned, and ready to tackle her car issue. I opened the barn doors and backed out a Ford Escort that had barely been used. Isabel joined me outside, marveling at the car's pristine condition. I explained its history, purchased for my ex-wife just before I caught her cheating, and offered it for her use until her car was fixed. She accepted with gratitude. We came up with a plan to move her broken-down car into the barn using my tractor. I would tow it onto the barn floor where a friend could assess whether it was worth fixing. If repairs were too costly, selling it for scrap might be her best option. Isabel agreed, though she seemed hesitant at first. Over lunch, she decided to accept my housekeeping job, and we agreed on terms. I paid her in advance from a stash of cash I kept in the cupboard. She remarked on my trust, pointing out that I had just met her and was already giving her access to both my money and my car. I shrugged it off, explaining that material things weren't what I valued most. The response seemed to strike a chord, but she didn't press further. We spent the afternoon moving her car and then went for a walk in the woods. Nora was thrilled to ride on the tractor as we towed the car into the barn. It didn't quite make it all the way in, so I nudged it into place with the tractor bucket. Afterward, we strolled down the wooded path at the edge of my property, with me carrying Nora on my shoulders when she grew tired. Her giggles made the experience more enjoyable than I'd expected, and for the first time in years, I felt a connection to another person. That evening, Isabel cooked dinner: steak, mashed potatoes, carrots, and cake for dessert. The meal was simple but satisfying, a rare treat to have someone else preparing food in my home. Afterward, I rested for a couple of hours before my night shift, though my thoughts remained on Isabel. She was a mystery, revealing little about herself beyond that one comment about pulling her husband's lover's hair. As I lay on my bed, I considered something that had unsettled me earlier. While I was supposedly asleep, Isabel had wandered outside and had also rummaged through my desk and even my nightstand. It could have been mere curiosity, but the intrusion nagged at me. For now, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Time, I figured, would reveal her intentions. Before heading to work that evening, I left early to make a call to Neil, an old friend I trusted. I explained the situation. There was a car sitting in my barn, belonging to a woman I'd recently hired as my housekeeper. She came with her little daughter, Nora, who had brought an unexpected light into my life. However, I was growing suspicious. I had noticed the woman, Isabel, had gone through my personal belongings, likely assuming I wouldn't notice. I asked Neil to inspect her car on Saturday, as I suspected it might have been tampered with intentionally. I also mentioned her request to make a phone call and asked him to find out whom she had called, if possible. Neil, ever practical, asked who I thought might be behind it. I admitted I wasn't sure, but doubted it was tied to my past trouble with Nicholas Grissom, the man whose affair with my ex-wife had landed me in prison. Grisholm had wealth and resources, but I couldn't see him still caring enough about Natalie to come after me. Neil reminded me, however, that Grisholm might harbor lingering resentment, not only because of his damaged knees, but also because I had escaped further repercussions after he dropped the civil suit. The rest of the week was surprisingly peaceful. Isabel proved capable in the house, and my meals were timely and well prepared. This freed me up to spend more time outdoors. I worked on cutting and hauling firewood from the trees I had felled the previous fall for my sugaring operation. Nora quickly became my little shadow, eager to join me in the woods. Isabel pitched in too, helping with the lighter tasks, and even learning to drive the tractor loaded with wood. It had been years since I'd spent this much time with a woman, and I occasionally caught myself watching Isabel. I was careful not to let her notice, but her presence stirred something in me I hadn't felt in a long time. For now, though, I kept my emotions in check, content to enjoy the moment. On Saturday, Neil called me down to the barn after examining the car. He confirmed my suspicions. The vehicle had been deliberately disabled, with 2 wires disconnected, a clear indication of tampering. He had also found a crumpled receipt in the car's door pocket, issued to a company called Ace Investigations in Rutland, Vermont. Isabel's phone call had been to a Mrs. Anderson, also located near Rutland. Neil concluded that Isabel was likely working as a spy, though for whom or why remained unclear. The news was disheartening. I had grown attached to Nora, and even Isabel had become a pleasant part of my life. Despite my suspicions, I decided to remain quiet for now. Neil suggested keeping my friends in the loop in case I needed their help again, but he warned me not to risk landing back in prison. Whatever happened next, it had to be handled discreetly. Over time, my life began to change. After years of isolation, Nora's presence softened me. To her, I was simply a kind figure in her world, and I couldn't help but respond in kind. Isabel, too, started to feel like more than just a housekeeper. Though I still avoided people, my desire to stay on the farm was now driven by a need to remain close to them. Isabel, however, wasn't without her mysteries. I occasionally caught her stealing glances at me, her expression tinged with sadness. It was clear something weighed on her, but she kept it hidden behind her polite and friendly demeanor. As planting season began, I arranged for a plot of land to be plowed by the local farmer who used my fields. Nora was thrilled to dig for worms in the freshly turned soil, and we took her to the lake to fish. She was ecstatic when we caught a dozen perch, and she insisted on helping clean them. Her pride in gutting her first fish was palpable, though Isabel was less thrilled when Nora returned with stained hands. Still, her pride softened any objections. One day we made a trip to Agüey for seeds and plants, returning with far more than we had space for. Isabel and Nora had carefully marked out rows in the garden while I slept, and the next morning we planted everything together. Over the following weeks, Nora's excitement grew as the first radishes sprouted, and even more so when she tasted the first one we deemed ready to eat. Life on the farm had taken a turn I hadn't expected. Despite lingering questions about Isabel's motives, I found myself enjoying the rhythm of shared meals, outdoor work, and small moments of joy with her and Nora. For the first time in years, my world felt a little less empty. Over the weeks, Isabel and I settled into a comfortable rhythm, though I couldn't ignore the nagging truth. She wasn't here for the reasons she claimed. I kept my distance emotionally, careful not to show the affection that was steadily growing. It was a different story with Nora. I poured my heart into being there for her, cherishing the innocence and joy she brought to my life. Together, we started to resemble a family. Weekends often meant movie outings, and breakfast at McDonald's became a twice-weekly ritual. 3 weeks after Isabel started working for me, I suggested she treat herself. I was heading into town for a haircut and offered to pay for her to get her hair done. At first, she hesitated, mentioning she couldn't afford it, but I insisted. Her long hair seemed like a bother to her, and I suggested a shorter style with a perm, adding that it would highlight her freckles, a feature I admitted I liked, even if most men didn't. After some thought, she agreed to make an appointment. As time passed, it became apparent that Isabel had been through nearly every personal paper in my house. Despite my suspicions, I said nothing, preferring to observe and wait. One Saturday in July, Neil stopped by for a beer, and we took a walk through the woods. During our conversation, he mentioned seeing Nicholas Grisholm entering the Ace Detective Agency earlier that week. Grisholm's sour demeanor upon leaving hinted that things weren't going as planned. I suspected Isabel's time here was nearing its end. The end came sooner than expected. When Neil and I returned from our walk, Isabel was hanging up the phone. She announced that a sick friend had called her for help and that she would be leaving immediately. I hid my disappointment, acknowledging that friends sometimes needed support. I turned to Neil and asked him to back her car out of the barn while I said my goodbyes to Nora. Nora clung to me, crying and refusing to let go. I held her tightly, overwhelmed by the thought of losing her. Turning to Isabel, I admitted that while I was glad to part ways with the last woman in my life, I didn't feel the same about her. I asked if I could hug her, knowing it might be my last chance. Isabel stepped into my arms, and for a moment we held on to each other, as if we didn't want to let go. Through tears, I spoke of the bond we had formed over the past few months. I confessed that we both had secrets, but believed that sharing them could bring us closer. I promised to reach out soon, reminding her that someone had to be around to harvest the garden we had planted together. Nora's small arms wrapped around my neck, and I kissed her goodbye. A week later, as I returned home, I saw Natalie standing by her car in my driveway. She wasted no time in bringing up Nicholas, who had been beaten up again and suffered a broken arm. She implied I might have been involved, though I calmly reminded her I had no reason to be. I added that if she truly believed I was responsible, she should have me investigated. Natalie seemed unsure whether Nicholas's renewed interest in me was her doing, but her warning was clear. Nicholas wouldn't stop until he found a way to put me back in prison. His bruised ego, combined with his wealth, made him a persistent threat. I reminded her of the damage he had caused, not just to me but to my family. Stealing another man's wife was a humiliation he never acknowledged, and my reaction had cost me everything: my job, my wife, and my reputation. I was now a felon, and the shame of that weighed heavily on my parents, who had once thought highly of her. Natalie had no response, her expression a mix of regret and frustration. But her presence confirmed what I already knew. Nicholas's vendetta wasn't over, and I had to remain vigilant. I was frustrated, sick of everything revolving around Natalie and her husband Nicholas. I needed to address this mess directly. Before I could hold back, I let out a bitter comment, my annoyance spilling over. "Natalie, you're looking well. The wealthy lifestyle suits you," I said, unable to hide the sarcasm. Her response was unexpected. "Nathaniel, why didn't you come after me instead of Nicholas? I was the one who betrayed you. If you'd confronted me, I would have felt guilty, and it all might have ended there. But Nicholas can't let it go. What sparked this latest drama?" I told her what I'd heard, that Nicholas had been investigating me again. I made it clear that whatever was happening to him was his own doing. I reminded her that my mother had taught me never to strike a woman, so she'd been spared my wrath. That didn't mean I didn't harbor resentment. My hatred for her betrayal remained. She warned me, saying Nicholas had the money and power to have me liquidated. Her words didn't faze me. I told her plainly that death didn't scare me much anymore, and even joked grimly about how his actions could ultimately cause his own downfall. Natalie seemed to struggle to decipher whether my words were a threat. I pressed further, suggesting sarcastically that maybe she'd benefit from Nicholas eliminating me, as it would leave her a wealthy widow. She snapped, telling me to stop. For the first time, she expressed regret, saying she hadn't intended to cause so much trouble. She believed things might have turned out differently if I hadn't caught her and Nicholas together that day. She claimed she'd been planning to leave me anyway and thought I would have granted her a divorce, albeit grudgingly. I admitted I didn't know how I would have reacted back then, but I reiterated that I wasn't going after Nicholas. He was the one coming after me. I suggested she and Nicholas move far away and start fresh, perhaps even start a family. She seemed taken aback by my sincerity, asking if I truly meant it. I assured her I did. Without another word, Natalie got into her car and drove off, not looking back. Exhausted from the encounter and lack of sleep, I went inside and collapsed without even eating. The next day I woke near noon, my mind lingering on Nora and Isabel. I missed them both deeply. Nora's boundless affection had brought light to my life, and Isabel had shown hints of longing for me when we said goodbye. Should I reach out to her? Knowing she had worked for an investigator, I worried she might have seen too much of life's darkness to want someone like me in her life. Later, I retrieved the mail and found a large envelope with a Rutland postmark. Inside was a dossier on Isabel Cosgood, including her full name, address, and phone number. It detailed her job at the detective agency and her connection to the investigation into me. The file even included a bill for the work done on my case. I learned that Nora's grandmother cared for her while Isabel worked alongside her brother at the agency. Taking a chance, I called the number listed, hoping Nora would answer. Instead, an older woman picked up. She introduced herself as Mrs. Anderson and confirmed that both Isabel and Nora were struggling with the separation. Nora prayed for me each night, and Isabel was quieter than ever. Mrs. Anderson admitted she had suspected the investigation would cause trouble, but hadn't expected it to hit Isabel so hard, especially since it affected Nora so deeply. Mrs. Anderson asked if I'd figured out Isabel's connection to the investigation. I assured her I had, and then asked for a favor. I wanted to meet with both Isabel and her brother. She agreed, offering to host me on Sunday at noon. Before we hung up, she hinted that Nora would be thrilled to hear I'd be visiting. According to her, I had become a father figure for the little girl, a role she had never experienced before. Afterward, I called Neil and shared what I'd learned from the dossier and my conversation with Mrs. Anderson. I also told him about Natalie's visit and her belief that Nicholas would never stop trying to ruin me. She'd implied that Nicholas's wealth and pride made him relentless. Neil suggested we keep tabs on Nicholas. He mentioned that Nicholas and Natalie often dined at the New England house and proposed we watch for them there. If they showed up, he'd let me know so we could act accordingly. I agreed. I'll be ready if the time comes. After a long day, I lay down for my evening rest, my mind heavy with thoughts about the tangled mess involving my ex-wife, Natalie, and her husband, Nicholas. Since leaving prison, I had lived in a state of near isolation, venturing out only for work, but I couldn't let this simmering tension dominate my life any longer. It was time to confront the situation head-on and reclaim some semblance of control. I couldn't rely on my friends to shield me forever. They had lives to lead, just as I needed to move forward with mine. I made a reservation at the New England house for the following evening. Regardless of whether Nicholas and Natalie showed up, I had to eat, and it wouldn't be a wasted effort. As expected, the call came confirming their presence. When I arrived at the restaurant, I was directed to a table where 9 of my old military friends were seated, strategically positioned near an alcove where Natalie and Nicholas dined alone. The setup effectively boxed them in, ensuring a private yet unignorable confrontation. Natalie spotted me first. Her face turned pale as she whispered to Nicholas, who froze upon noticing us. He avoided eye contact, glancing nervously at the men surrounding their secluded space. Natalie attempted to collect herself, taking a bite of food that caused her to choke and cough. She moved as if to rise, but I gave a subtle shake of my head, signaling her to stay put. She complied without protest. The waitress came to take our drink orders, and I offered to buy a round for the couple in the alcove. Both declined. Throughout the meal, I engaged my friends in casual conversation, asking about their families and careers. I spoke loudly enough for Nicholas and Natalie to hear, knowing they were listening. When dessert came, I again offered to treat the couple, but they refused once more. When the checks arrived, I picked up theirs, handing my credit card to the waitress. "These are friends of mine," I said coolly. "I'll cover their bill." After dinner, I addressed Natalie directly. "Would you mind switching seats with me so I can have a word with Nicholas?" Hesitant, she eventually complied, moving to the chair I had just vacated. I took her seat across from Nicholas, who sat stiffly, refusing to meet my gaze. "So, Nicholas," I began, "I see you've hurt your arm. How's it feeling?" "You know damn well it's painful," he snapped. "And you caused it. What do you want? Who are these men?" I leaned back, letting the tension simmer. "First, let's clear something up. I didn't break your arm. You did that to yourself, but let me tell you a story." I paused, gauging his reaction, though he still wouldn't look at me. "When I was 18, I joined the military. A kid, really. I ended up serving overseas with the men you see here. They're all a bit older than me, but we bonded over shared hardships. Back then, they were all bitter about their failed marriages, each having been cheated on and divorced. I told them I'd marry someone better, someone who wouldn't betray me. When I married Natalie, I thought I'd proven them wrong. Turns out they were right. I let the silence linger before continuing. One time during our deployment, I spotted an IED on the road ahead. If I hadn't noticed it, God knows how many lives would have been lost. These men credit me with saving their lives. We lost touch after I left the service, but they rallied around me when I went to prison. Tonight is the first time we've all been together in years." I leaned forward. "They think they owe me, Nicholas, and they don't take kindly to people who mess with me." He shifted uncomfortably. I pressed on. "Let's be honest. Natalie is half the reason for the mess between us. She cheated and admits it freely. But you couldn't let things rest after I confronted you. You had to escalate, pushing for my prosecution and seeing me sent to prison. Then you attempted a civil suit, but dropped it after being warned. You should have listened." Nicholas remained silent, so I continued. "Now, I hear you've been investigating me again. What are you hoping to find? Evidence to blame me for your misfortunes? Every step you take only brings you closer to more trouble. Maybe it's time to move on. Natalie is still a beautiful woman, and I believe she loves you. Ask yourself this. Would you feel the same if she weren't so pretty? You need to think about what's really driving your actions." I stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "I've said what I needed to. Think it over and let me know your decision by Saturday at noon." It's time for me to move forward with my life, and I suggest you do the same. I walked away, leaving Natalie in her former seat and Nicholas with his head bowed. Outside, my friends dispersed silently, their presence alone having sent the intended message. No thanks were needed. They understood. I drove off, feeling a mix of resolve and exhaustion, knowing the confrontation was just one step toward reclaiming my future. That morning, after a long night at work, I headed home hoping for some much-needed sleep. Rest didn't come easily. I tossed and turned for over an hour before finally drifting off. The pounding on my door jolted me awake. Groggy, I shuffled to the kitchen and peered out the glass. A taxi was pulling out of my driveway, leaving behind 2 suitcases on the walkway. When I opened the door, Natalie stood leaning against the side of the house. She looked battered, a bruise darkening her cheek and one hand holding her ribs for support. Her movements were unsteady as she asked to come in, explaining that she needed to talk. I helped her inside and eased her into a chair, noticing her wince as she sat. She admitted Nicholas had been drinking and hit her, though she didn't think anything was broken. I poured her a cup of the black coffee I had left over from breakfast, and she sipped it gratefully. She wasted no time diving into her story. "Nicholas has completely lost it," she began. "That talk you had with him in front of your friends humiliated him. He's been seething ever since. Last night, he accused me of wanting to come back to you. When I denied it, he lashed out and hit me. After he passed out on the couch, I packed my things and left." I remained silent, letting her continue. "I've decided to leave him," she said. "There's no love left between us if there ever was any. I withdrew most of my money from the bank this morning, but I can't use my car. Nicholas smashed the windshield during one of his fits. I noticed you still have the car you bought for me years ago. I'd like to buy it from you, for the full amount you paid when it was new. I even have a cashier's check ready." I studied her for a moment. "Where are you planning to go?" I asked. "Florida," she replied. "But first, I'm stopping to see your parents. I want to apologize to them for all the pain I've caused. Maybe it'll help you hate me a little less. I need to leave town before Nicholas finds me. He's been making terrible threats. Against you and me." Without another word, I retrieved the car's title from my lockbox, signed it over to her, and handed her the keys. "The car's full of gas," I said. "It's still practically new. Just keep the plates on until you can get replacements in Florida. Are you sure you're okay to drive?" She nodded. "I'll be fine, but you need to watch your back. Nicholas is unraveling, and his hatred for you runs deep. Believe it or not, I haven't been happy with him either. Guilt over how I treated you has eaten at me for years. I thought I was trading up, but I've paid for that mistake every day since." Her words didn't soften my stance. "Natalie, my mistake was losing control and beating Nicholas when I caught you two. I should have divorced you and walked away. Instead, my actions gave him the upper hand, and I've been paying for it ever since. You need to leave before he sobers up and comes looking for you. He blames me for everything, but the truth is, both of you are to blame." Tears welled in her eyes as she stood to leave. "You're right, and I'm sorry, Nathaniel, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I won't be coming back, so goodbye." I placed her suitcases in the trunk while she adjusted the driver's seat. She gave a small wave before driving away, leaving a trail of dust on the gravel road. I skipped lunch and tried to get some sleep, but it didn't last long. The sound of a car screeching into my yard yanked me from bed. Moments later, the unmistakable roar of an engine spinning out filled the air, followed by the slam of a car door. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Nicholas Grisholm had arrived. The front door banged open with such force that the glass shattered. I stayed quiet, listening as Nicholas stormed through the house, shouting my name. He searched every room, even flinging open closets, and then stomped upstairs. I could hear him rifling through more rooms, his frustration building with each empty discovery. I didn't own a cell phone to call the police, and there wasn't time to use the landline. As Nicholas thundered down the stairs, I slipped out the back door and headed for the barn. Why didn't I confront him? Simple. He was bigger and angrier than me. The only reason I'd bested him years ago was sheer rage and the element of surprise. Now, he had the upper hand, and I had no means to defend myself. My tools had been confiscated after my felony conviction, leaving me without even a basic deterrent. My only option was to stay out of sight and hope he'd leave. The morning after a restless night, I tried to catch some sleep, but was interrupted by the sound of destruction inside my house. Nicholas was still inside, smashing things. The noise lasted for about 10 minutes before I heard his footsteps heading outside. From the barn, I watched as he stared at the outbuildings, seemingly deciding that Natalie wouldn't have hidden there. He stormed to his car, peeled out of the driveway, and lost control. sending the vehicle into a ditch and smashing it against a tree. I returned to the house, grabbed the phone, and called the police. Calmly, I explained my identity, location, and the situation with Nicholas. The dispatcher assured me that a patrol car would arrive shortly and asked me to stay on the line in case anything else happened. I could see Nicholas through the window, struggling to free his car. After several minutes, he managed to get back onto the driveway and sped away recklessly, narrowly missing an oncoming car. I reported this near collision to the dispatcher. A minute later, Nicholas disappeared from view. The dispatcher asked for background information, and I briefly explained my history with him, carefully omitting Natalie's earlier visit. Bringing up marital disputes wouldn't help the situation. Before ending the call, I requested an officer to document the damage Nicholas had done to my home. Exhausted but unable to do more, I went back to bed. My kitchen was a wreck, chairs broken, cupboards damaged, and dishes smashed to pieces. Nicholas's rampage had left a chaotic mess. I woke again when a police car arrived. Heavy knocks at the door pulled me from sleep, and I stumbled to let them in. The officers parked near the driveway, examining the deep tire marks Nicholas had left behind. Inside, they asked if he'd been apprehended. There was a long pause before one officer responded grimly, "Yes, we caught up to him, but he's dead." Less than 15 minutes after your call, he drove off the bridge at the bottom of the hill. His car hit the railing, went airborne, and landed upside down in the brook below. A tree snapped during the fall, piercing the windshield. We were almost at the bridge and saw the whole thing. I didn't press for more details. The officers surveyed the damage in my home, taking notes. They asked about my history with Nicholas and whether I had seen Natalie recently. I admitted she'd stopped by earlier, warning me that Nicholas was behaving erratically. She claimed they'd argued before he passed out on the couch. The officers requested her contact information. I explained that I didn't have her phone number, but believed she was driving to Florida. I told them she had purchased a car from me earlier that morning and provided a description of the vehicle, including the license plates, which still bore my tags. After the officers left, I pieced together a quick meal, skipped dinner, and lay down for an hour before my night shift. At work, my thoughts circled back to Natalie and Nicholas. I couldn't deny feeling relieved that Nicholas was gone. Natalie had hinted that living with him had been difficult, but my sympathy was limited. His actions had derailed my life, and now, perhaps, I could finally move forward. I decided that my next step would involve reaching out to Isabel and Nora. Whether I could salvage a relationship with them depended on what Isabel had uncovered during her investigation. If her findings had turned her against me, there might be nothing left to pursue. I resolved to wait a few more days before contacting her. That night, I read a brief article about Nicholas's fatal accident. The authorities were inspecting his car to determine why it had veered into the bridge railing. After my shift, I called my mother to share the news. The conversation stretched on as she asked for details, and I promised to explain more during her upcoming visit. My parents were planning a trip here in 2 weeks, which gave me something to look forward to. That day, I slept deeply, catching up on much-needed rest. Over my evening meal, I wondered whether the police had informed Natalie about Nicholas's death. Despite everything, she was likely to feel the weight of his loss and of the chaos they had both left behind. I decided to call Mrs. Anderson, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking her to have Isabel check the local papers, the Brattleboro Reformer and the Rutland Herald. Both carried news of Nicholas Grisholm's death, and I thought Isabel might find it relevant given her time working for me. Before ending the message, I asked if the invitation for Sunday still stood. That evening, while eating a bacon and egg sandwich, the phone rang. It was Isabel. "Hi," she began. "Hi yourself," I replied. "How's Nora? I miss her." "She's good," Isabel said, her voice warm. "She misses you and keeps asking when we'll move back in with you." I chuckled. "I've been wondering the same thing. Is your current job better than working here? If it's about money, I can make it worth your while." "No," she said firmly. "I hate what I'm doing now. I loved working for you." "Is that so? How much do you really know about me, Isabel?" I asked. "I hear you've been digging around?" She laughed softly. "I lived with you for 3 months and must be the worst detective ever. I learned nothing about you except what was on the surface." "Maybe there's more," I teased. "But it's buried deep. I could tell you, but then I'd have to marry you to keep you from testifying." There was a pause before she responded. "Nathaniel, don't joke about that. I suspect you already know plenty about me." "I do," I admitted. "I know about your college boyfriend who left when you got pregnant. I know you dropped out to have Nora, that your father passed away, and you've struggled to find stable work since. Your brother and your mom have been your main support. And? And your mom told me she invited me for Sunday dinner. Is that okay with you? Oh, yes, she said quickly. But we haven't told Nora yet. She'd never let us rest if she knew. Can you come tomorrow instead? I wish I could, I said. But Nicholas trashed my house before his accident, and I need to put things back together. I'll come early Sunday, I promise. She sighed, but agreed. I'm anxious to see you. I whistled my way to work that night, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But an even bigger surprise awaited me the next morning. Isabel's car was parked outside the house when I arrived. As soon as I stepped out of my vehicle, Nora came bounding down the steps and threw herself into my arms. She showered me with kisses, which I happily returned. Isabel appeared in the doorway, a coffee cup in hand and a radiant smile on her face. She set the cup down and walked straight into my arms. I held her tightly, reluctant to let go. I've wanted to do that for so long, she whispered. Me too, I admitted. She pulled back slightly. Drink your coffee. I've made eggs and bacon. I figured after you told Mom about the mess Nicholas made cleaning up his woman's work. I'm your housekeeper after all. We'll discuss pay later. Her voice rose playfully as she called out, Mom, come meet Nathaniel Johnson III, the best boss I've ever had. Nora's in love with him, so I'll have to keep an eye on her. Her chatter filled the room as Nora climbed into my lap. I couldn't get up to greet Mrs. Anderson, who entered with a smile that mirrored Isabel's. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Johnson, she said warmly. Please call me Nathaniel, I replied. Everyone else does, she nodded. I came to meet the man both my girls are so taken with. I hope you don't mind. Not at all. I'm glad to have you here, though I think Isabel might put you to work. I've got my hands full with this little angel. Nora giggled, wiggling in delight. Over breakfast, I realized I was ready to propose to Isabel. When she asked how much I knew about her family, I handed her the dossier I had received. As Isabel flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. You figured out the name I gave you was my mom's maiden name, didn't you? I nodded as she stopped suddenly. Oh my God, she exclaimed. You even know my panty size. How? I laughed. A friend of mine happened to be behind you in line at Walmart while you were checking out. She stared at me. How many of these friends do you have? My tone grew serious. That's something I'd only share if we were married, but I'd love to tell you someday. Her expression softened. That almost sounds like a proposal. Would you say yes if it was? She hesitated, then smiled. Oh, Nathaniel, I want to say yes so badly. Just give me a little more time. Take all the time you need, I assured her. She reached for my hand. Love and marriage are definitely on my mind. I think we're halfway there, but there are parts of my past I'm not proud of, and you'll have to accept them. Still, my future looks brighter now than it has in years, and I owe that to you. Later, as I prepared to rest, I asked Nora if she wanted to nap with me. Her face lit up, and as she settled beside me, I thought about how much joy she brought into my life. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Just before I woke that morning, I'd assured myself there was nothing in my past that could resurface to trouble me. By then, Nora had already gotten up, and I overheard voices in the kitchen, one of them unmistakably Natalie's. Reluctantly, I knew I had to face her, despite Isabel being in the house. Nora ran to me as soon as I entered the room, demanding to be picked up. In the kitchen, Natalie's tear-streaked face betrayed the weight of the news she carried. The police had contacted her to inform her of Nicholas's death, a message she hadn't received until the morning after she left. Her grief seemed genuine as she expressed regret for the chaos her actions had caused in my life. As we talked, the truth became clearer. The injuries Nicholas suffered weren't of my doing, but likely the work of men who felt indebted to me from our time in combat. They'd seen themselves as protectors, though their actions only deepened the tragedy of the situation. Natalie acknowledged her role in the chain of events, admitting that her infidelity had set everything in motion. She planned to inherit significant wealth and intended to move on with her life, leaving behind the wreckage of her choices. With that, the dark chapter of my life came to an end. It had taken 5 years, but for the first time, my future felt brighter. Isabel and I spent a quiet weekend reflecting on our pasts. She confessed that her initial arrival had been orchestrated by her brother, who'd tasked her with investigating me. Though she only intended to stay briefly, her growing feelings for me kept her there. I shared how my friends had stepped in to protect me during my most vulnerable times, though we both agreed their efforts might have worsened Nicholas's downward spiral. The constant pressure and humiliation seemed to have pushed him beyond his limits. At work, I transitioned from the night shift to days and was quickly promoted to lead man. with the promise of a salaried position if I proved myself. My parents visited shortly after, witnessing my proposal to Isabel. We married in a simple courthouse ceremony, followed by a casual barbecue reception at the farm, where Nora proudly harvested potatoes for the feast. Later, Isabel's brother admitted that his investigation into my past had yielded nothing Nicholas could exploit. He suggested I cultivate relationships with local detectives, as they could provide valuable insight into investigative techniques. The advice was sound, though I made a mental note to avoid the taboo subject of Nicholas Grisholm in future discussions. Over time, Natalie faded from our lives, apart from a cryptic Christmas card each year. The postmark was always unreadable, leaving her whereabouts a mystery. Now, as spring arrives, life feels stable and sweet. The first syrup of the season is ready to be drawn from the sugar pan, and Isabel and Nora are at my side, savoring the moment. Their presence is a reminder of how far I've come and the simple joys that make the future seem so promising.